Chapter 58. 1. We're now even, we are together at last, and will never ever part again. This was the woman's voice, gentle and warm, in complete contrast to her incisive actions and blood-filled smile. Qingyu had seriously wanted to go have a clear look of her face, but it seemed that there was always a layer of mystifying fog shrouding her, casting the countenance behind an impenetrable blur. After speaking that sentence, the woman then slowly turned towards her, and her red lips parted slightly, seeming to be saying something, but there was no sound coming out. For some unknown reason, Qingyu felt that the woman was looking at her, and the words that had not been spoken, through the shape of her mouth and lips, Qingyu knew what she had said. She had said, "Sorry." That woman had said to her, "Sorry? But why? Little fox, wake up. Don't sleep anymore." The blood-colored sky was gone in an instant, and the man and woman disappeared from before her eyes. Reflected in her eyes was light purple satin around her. Qingyu blinked her eyes groggily. Where is this place? Sweet heavens, thank the heavens and earth. The lass has finally come awake. Bai Yan's enchanting peach blossom eyes flared wide, his face showing highly exaggerated delight. Look at me. Do you still remember me? After the last parting, calculating it carefully, it had already been more than 3 months. With the little lass still so young, she might very well not know him anymore. It was most probably due to his overly loud voice, which to the young lady who had just awoken and was still feeling highly groggy must have sounded demonically deafening. Immediately creased up her brows, her beautiful eyes closing a moment, seemingly in great discomfort. Her pale lips moved, and then spat out one single word. Noisy. And having been scorned and ridiculed daily to be a quack doctor by a certain heartless man for the past few days, to Bai Yin, who had been longing for the little lass to awaken for so many days so he would be able to prove his skill, his heart praying and hoping as he watched her finally come awake, his outburst of pure ecstatic joy came to earn him just one word. Noisy. What he felt in his heart at that moment, Crumbled would not even begin to describe it. Of course, that would not be the thing that would pain him the most. Lu Junyao, who had been watching the young lady all this time, had upon seeing that slightly impatient expression on her face, then immediately uttered expressionlessly, "Get out?" Bai Yin found himself incapable of speech. Get out? Asking him to get out again? Damn it! Your great lord here doesn't have a temper, is it? Am I to be summoned or dismissed just by a word from you? Fine. I'll go out. Who cares? Bai Yin went walking out with his face filled with resentment, dragging the man who was dozing off in the corner along with him, not forgetting to slam the door shut behind him viciously. Qingyu's brows furrowed up as her head throbbed, and she was just about to lift her hand up to massage her temples when she discovered that her hand was gripped around something tightly. She looked down instinctively and discovered that she was holding Lu Junyao's hand. Those phoenix-like eyes widened as she stared in shock, and she flung the hand away like it was a hot potato. Lu Junyao was speechless. Tossed away after use. That bad habit needs to change. It was after a good while that Qingyu finally came completely awake. She had slept for too long after all, and her body was feeling sore and painful all over. She summoned up her spirit powers to ease through her entire body, and then slowly sat herself up in the bed. After seeing that she had come fully awake, and a tinge of color had returned to her pale cheeks, seeming to look fine, Lu Junyao then slowly said, "You've slept for 5 whole days." Qingyu was taken aback a moment. What did you say? I slept for 5 days? The events of the All Saints' Day festival were still all so clear in her mind. So how could so much time have passed so quickly? She was clearly feeling as if mere moments have passed, and that she had merely been trapped in a nightmare. Wait. The expression on Qingyu's face suddenly froze. Chapter 58. 2. Where now even she could still clearly remember herself being trapped in her dreams, but why she unable to recall a single bit of the things that happened in there? She had forgotten it cleanly, and did not have a single clue. There was a faint blurry impression, but the deeper she delved into her mind, the less she was able to remember. Even though she could not recall anything, she did not persist. Didn't you go back already? Why have you returned? Lu Junyao arched up an eyebrow. I was done dealing with my business and had nothing to do, so I came back to see you. If those words were heard by the people from the dark region, they would definitely vomit out blood that would spurt at least 3 feet. Thinking about it, throughout the entire dark region, it was feared that the most idle person would be this very lord here. When he went back, he had only needed to show his face to put everyone in awe, and every single little task was actually properly arranged and dealt with by several of his capable lieutenants. In Cloud Heaven, there were people who hated him so much they wanted to obliterate his entire clan, but there were also people who worshipped him like divinity of the 9 heavens. Hearing those words from him, Qingyu glanced at him with an almost imperceptible smile. You really came back just to see me? Don't you know that I very nearly lost my life because of you? You're not that weak. Lu Junyao seemed to not have noticed her displeased tone of voice, and his violet eyes glittered dazzlingly. This matter started because of me. I will deal with it properly. Moreover, I have not yet repaid the debt for saving my life. If we are to just go our separate ways from here on, wouldn't that make me a heartless ingrate? The certainty in his voice that nothing would happen to him seemed to show that he knew some secret she was hiding. Qingyu lowered her gaze and let out a soft laugh. I wouldn't say that you owe me for saving your life. I was merely just returning the favor for the Polar Fire Corps. Moreover, it was your people who rescued me from the barricaded spirit tower this time. So we're even. And by that you mean? The man's gaze grew penetrating in an instant, the mysterious violet eyes looking much more immersive. The woman who came to seek revenge on me was most probably just a pawn. The real mastermind behind it has not yet been dealt with. Qingyu said slowly, her long upslanted eyes looking right into his eyes. I am not fearful of things like this, but I loathe bothersome trouble. You have too many enemies, and I do not want to tread into such muddy waters. So it is best that we do not have any more dealings. Saying that, she had already come off from the bed and was smoothing out the creases on her clothes. Lu Junyao stood looking at her back and immediately felt that something was not right. Haha. And you intend to sever all relations? There wasn't much of a relationship between us in the first place. The young lady already had a hand on the door and was pushing it open, where her footsteps halted when she heard his words. She then turned her eyes to glance back at him. We really could have been friends, but you are too dangerous. I would still like to live for a few more years. The incident this time had left an especially deep impression which made her realize that lending a hand in the name of righteousness and sticking one's nose into other people's business are all illnesses. Treatment is needed. When Qingyu went out, then saw Bai Jiyan. He was pulling on the seemingly boneless gray-robed man and saying something. When he saw her coming out, his eyes lit up. Have you recovered? Are you leaving already? The bright sparkling eyes caused Qingyu to knit up her brows. What could have brought about that expression that was like a dog seeing a bone? Maybe he saw that the gaze the young lady was looking at him with was a little strange, and Bai Jiyan was rather taken aback. You really don't remember me anymore? I remember. Qingyu nodded her head slightly, her eyes then coming to rest upon the gray-robed man for about 2 seconds before she went walking out of the gathered cloud loft. May we never meet again. Bai Jiyan stood there stunned, watching her walk out till she had gone a far distance away before he sputtered out in bewilderment. What did she mean by never meet again? Could Lu Junyao have made her angry? Bam! A loud crash from upstairs interrupted his words, so sudden and abrupt that it shocked the gray-robed man who had been sleeping with his head resting on the table awake. Chapter 58. 3. We're now even. What happened? Is it an earthquake? The gray-robed man was highly flustered as he looked at Bai Jiyan to ask. Seeing that there was nothing happening anymore, his head then dropped back onto the table and immediately made long and peaceful breathing noises. The corner of Bai Jiyan's mouth twitched. The day will come that this fellow would not even know what killed him. Eternal Peace Duke's Manor. In the tranquil abode, a tall and thin youth sat quietly on the stone stool within the courtyard, carrying the little snow toad in one hand, the other holding a medical book, where its edges were a little tattered, like it had been flipped and read frequently. Little Snow, has Qingyu gone away? She has never not come home for so many days before. The youth muttered softly, and looking at his eyes closely, they were rather red and bloodshot. Ever since the day the All Saints' Day festival ended, Qingyu had gone missing and had not come back at all. He had not closed his eyes to sleep for several days, as all of this must be a dream. If he allowed himself to sleep now, he feared he would not be able to wake up from this nightmare. He believed that Qingyu will definitely come back. She had promised him that she would always be by his side. The youth then covered his eyes with one hand, looking like he was trying to suppress the tears that were surging up inside. The snow toad in his arm suddenly leapt out with a croak. The little creature who had been silent for the past few days suddenly excited, where a highly familiar voice filled with mirth was then heard ringing out. "What are you two doing out here? Waiting for me?" Qingyu's back immediately stiffened. Was he hallucinating? "Little Bay, right in the middle of the day and you're dozing off?" A hand suddenly slapped him on the shoulder, the slightly cold touch passing through his clothes onto his skin. The hand covering the youth's eyes lowered, and he quickly turned himself around to stare fixedly at the young lady behind him. The red and bloodshot eyes startled Qingyu a moment. What happened? It has only been a few days. She did not see the kid, and he looked such a wretched sight, like he had been afflicted with lunacy. Qingbei just stared at her with wide eyes, looking unblinkingly at her, and then hugging her waist like a little child and burying his head into her as he uttered with a choked voice, "I thought you left." Qingyu was a little shocked by his sudden actions for an instant, and she then looked on helplessly at the lost and pitiful youth who was acting like he had suffered endless aggrievement outside. She reached her hand out and ruffled his head. "Silly boy, what are you doing? How old are you already, and you're still crying your nose red? Aren't you ashamed? You said you will never abandon me and will always be by my side." The youth was not showing the slightest sliver of shame as he went on to complain persistently. "Who has abandoned you? I just encountered something unexpected, and that is why," Qingyu said with a sigh. If she had not gone out that day, it was thought that the several hundred people in the Imperial Palace Grand Hall would have met with disaster. But how was she going to tell the kid about that? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Although he was slowly growing, but in many areas, he was still not strong enough. Qingyu peeled herself out from the youth's bare hug and looked at that haggard countenance that had not slept for several days, her expression serious and stern. Such situations, I hope that it will not only be the first time, but also for it to be the last time. Qingbei was taken aback, seeing her suddenly become so serious. You must remember this. In this world, nobody can be depended upon, and you can only depend on yourself. Qingyu patted him on the shoulder, her eyes dark. You must become strong, and you must first learn to have no weaknesses. You must still be able to continue to live no matter who leaves you. Do you understand? It is the same even for me. If the day comes that I am no longer around, I hope that you will be able to be so powerful that no one dares to trifle with you. Chapter 59. 1. All-seeing soul-tracing mirror Qingbei just looked at her in daze. In the few days that she disappeared, it seemed like the aura from the young lady's body had become more profound and deep, and right in that instant, it felt as if she was giving him an exceptionally strict lesson that was forcing him to have to grow. His eyes then showed a sense of unfamiliarity and confusion. "Little Bay, it's time to grow up." Qingyu sat herself down beside him. Looking at that innocent expression on her face, although she could not bear to, she still said softly, "Back when I was just about your age, I had already assumed the position as the head of a family clan. No matter how many people were unable to accept a little young girl like me as the head, I was more powerful than them, and they were fearful of me, not daring to utter a word of complaint." The youth was a little surprised, as this was the first time that he was hearing her speak of her past to him. "What were you like in the past?" Qingbei was suddenly highly curious. Hearing that, Qingyu merely smiled faintly. "The me in the past," her words paused, seemingly thinking back to times long past, "was a cold and heartless walking corpse who knew nothing but to cultivate, where there was only one thing in my mind, which was to become stronger. Didn't you have any family kin?" "Family? I did." Qingyu lowered her eyes, the ends of her mouth lifting up slightly. But when placed before authoritative power, kinship is something one can choose to do with or without. Since the beginning of time, There has been no lack of examples of infighting where many have killed their own people, though she was speaking of it so lightly now. But when it happened to her, she had not been able to accept it at all. That was why in her previous life, she had chosen death. At least she could deceive herself that from beginning till the end, all those beautiful memories in the past had all been real. Qingyu gathered back her mind that had drifted a far way off, to then turn to the youth with a smile. Do you remember when we met for the first time? They were twins, and they had been living beside each other since they were born. So when she said the first time they met, you were still so young then, but you were already able to choose to face death for your sister's sake. There was bright shining hope in you, and you deserve a better life. That was why I chose to save you. After having lived to see her brother, who was her closest kin, turn maniacal against her because of money and power in his quest to climb higher, Qingyu no longer trusted anyone. If even blood ties and kinship could be abandoned so completely, then what else was there in the world that would stay true? From being a kind and innocent young girl, she had grown up in an instant. She was clearly at an age where she should be most lively and prone to laughter, but she turned to become matured and steady, like she had already lived through much of the vicissitudes of life. She could choose to give up everything and to not depend on anything or anyone. If holding all this power and authority would make the people at her side betray her, then she would rather be the one standing at the highest point, where everyone else could only to look up to her. This youth here was just like she was back then, innocent and like a clean sheet, the bloodshed and the cruelty of the outside world having not tainted that pair of crystal-clear eyes in the slightest. But with him like this, protected under her wing, how big a change would he be faced with if the day came that she had to leave him? She would never ever want to see such a thing happen. The flawless and beautiful face of the young lady then came to be tinged with a look of sadness, which made one's heart wince to see. Sis, Qing Bei called out to her hesitant, and his hand then held hers gently. His tone determined and resolute, he said, I will become strong, and that day will not be too far off. No matter what kind of bad things you might have experienced in the past, you must believe me. We are the two closest people in this world, and we will never hurt each other. The day will come that you will stand right behind me, and I will be able to hold up this end of our world. Chapter 59. 2. All-seeing soul-tracing mirror. That still rather puerile and handsome-looking face was young, sunny, and filled with great exuberance for life. His expression was serious and stern, and when he was making such a proclamation, he seemed to exude a certain kind of persuasive charm that made people want to believe him. The ends of Qing Yu's lips curled up slowly, her slender fingers running through the young youth's hair, and with a highly gentle voice she said, You will definitely achieve that. From the first time she saw the boy's eyes through the raging flames, she had seemed to see that he would live an extraordinary life. The most famous wholesome mealhouse in the imperial capital, famed to be a food paradise that was known throughout the Green Wave Kingdom. It was unlike all the other high-class restaurants and tea-houses who discriminated against the common folks, where everything sold and there were very reasonably priced, and not charged at outrageous prices. Hence, not only the royalty and aristocracy liked to frequent the place, the commoners loved to come here even more. And the wholesome mealhouse was overbrimming with customers every day, because they only accepted 500 orders every day. Many who came late were not even able to eat a single bite of their cuisine, and many were there who made reservations more than a month in advance. Over here, they did not care how revered or noble one's identity was. It was rumored that the boss of the wholesome mealhouse was also someone famous, with an illustrious background. No one had ever come to stir up trouble with the wholesome mealhouse before, because even their waiters who served up the food were faultless, whose manners were so excellent they seemed to have undergone very strict training. After having her marriage engagement called off, Yanning Luo was seen to smile a lot more, especially when she was now one step closer to the person she admired so much. Yuxian Yin loved to make friends with powerful people. She had always admired talented people who possessed high and profound cultivation, and ever since she was defeated by Yanning Luo, they had become good friends. But she did not why. Whenever Yanning Luo invited her out, she would always extend the invitation to Qing Yili to come out together with them as well, though Qing Yili had never once agreed. On this day, Yanning Luo brought Yuxian Yin to come to the wholesome mealhouse. It was only after they had come to interact with each other that she realized the lively and jovial little princess was very interested in food. So, in order to pull the distance between them closer, Yin-Ning Luo had taken the initiative to bring her to come here to eat the most famous and delicious food in the imperial capital. Sweet heavens! Yu Xianyan's beautiful blue eyes grew wide as she stared, her face filling up with shock. I have never seen a restaurant so overflowing with people. It is completely filled. The wholesome meal house had 3 stories in total, and at a glance, the first story was completely filled, with many more people squeezed together without even a chair for them to sit on, while a whole bunch of people were also seen drinking and chatting along the second level's balcony railing. Yin-Ning Luo looked at her shocked face and then said with a laugh, "You are not from the Green Wave Kingdom and do not live here, otherwise, you will know that this is the norm every day. The wholesome meal house has so many people every day, with people who come here from far and wide, just for one of their meals. It's really that amazing? Then they must have a very excellent cook. I wonder if I can invite him to go cook in our Water Edge Kingdom." The young girl's thinking was both beautiful and innocent. That will be difficult. The cooks here only takes orders from their boss. Someone had previously put up a high offer to employ them but was flatly rejected. As Yin-Ning Luo spoke, she handed a crystal card to the good-looking youth at the door. When the youth saw that, he took it respectfully and brushed his spirit power lightly over its surface before handing it back to her. He then made a gesture to invite them in. "The food has been prepared. Please go up to the lunar mark chamber on the 2nd story." Yu Xiaoning had some dealings with the boss of the wholesome meal house, and Yin-Ning Luo had come to benefit from that as well, without needing to make a reservation every time she came here, where she was also provided with a private room. It might have been fate. After Yin-Ning Luo and Yu Xian came up to the 2nd level and were walking past the sun-marked chamber next door, Yin-Ning Luo heard a voice that was highly familiar to her, icy cold and emotionless, exactly like the feeling that person made her feel. Chapter 59. 3. All-seeing soul-tracing mirror, is something wrong? Yu Xian saw her suddenly stop, and she opened her mouth ask in puzzlement. "The Duke of Vast Seas seems to be here too," Yin Xian said and then held her breath, before raising a hand to knock lightly on the door. After waiting for a while, the door then suddenly opened. A beautiful and alluring face looking highly flirtatious appeared smilingly before their eyes. It was such a beautiful and charming-looking man. Behind the bead curtain inside sat a man with his signature silver locks, and his identity was clear. Hey, what a coincidence. To think that Princess Ningfeng and the 9th princess would be here as well. Bailey Ji Ran was taken aback for just 1 second, before he then said with an easy laugh, "Apologies if we've interrupted you. We heard your voices and just came over give a courteous greeting." Yin-Ning Luo said with a courteous nod, reserved and still dignified, making a highly intelligent call. That was what Bailey Ji Ran thought in his heart. And Yu Xian beside her suddenly had a strange look in her eyes. She had known Big Brother Yi Li for so many years, but even she had not been able to identify his voice just now. But Yin-Ning Luo had been so certain that she had heard Big Brother Yi Li's voice in an instant, which was just a little mystifying. Though Yu Xian, who had lived her whole life inside the imperial family and was innocent and kind, but she was also highly intelligent, immediately able to detect that something was not right. The answer with such a great sense of propriety immediately made Bailey Ji Ran come to like the young lady a little. Fantastic. Why not come in and have a seat? He swore that he had merely meant those words as a casual, courteous reply, but the very next second saw Yin-Ning Luo already lifting the corners of her mouth up to say with a smile, "If that is the case, then pardon us for intruding. I'll get the people to send our food in here." With his words already thrown out there, how could Bailey Ji Ran refuse at that moment? So, he had no choice but to invite them inside. Behind her, Yu Xian's eyes glinted, becoming even more certain of the thought she had in her mind. This Yin-Ning Luo, towards Big Brother Yi Li. At that moment in the private room, the few people sat facing each other. Qing Yi Li sat there drinking without a word, and the atmosphere in the room was a little heavy. And when Qing Yi Li was in such a state, Yu Xian usually did not dare to speak much. She had seen how Qing Yi Li was like when he flew into a rage, so she merely greeted him very briefly and then did not say another word. Seeing the situation, Yin Ning Luo opened her mouth to say in a gentle tone, "You seem to be in a rather somber mood recently, and I wonder what could be bothering you. Share it with us, and I might be able to help you with it." And without knowing why, when it was clear that they had only met once, but the way Yin Ning Luo was speaking to him was being natural and casual, like they had known each other for a very long time. "No need. Thanks." The man's voice was still as cold and distant as ever, seemingly isolating himself from everyone else, where no one would be able to reach his heart. Bellied saw that the atmosphere had become a little awkward, and he quickly laughed to release the tension. "Really grateful for Princess Ningfeng's offer, but this is something I'm afraid you might not be able to help with, as even I have absolutely no clue at all. Will you be willing to share it with me?" Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. We are looking for a person, and this person could possibly look entirely different now from before. I have searched a good half of the constellation lands and have not even found a single clue. Bellied said with a shrug of his shoulders, a helpless expression on his face. "So I see." Yin Ning Luo bit her lip and gave a soft laugh, her eyes turning towards the melancholy and rather depressing man. "If you're looking for a person, maybe I just might be able to help." "Are you serious?" Bellied was startled a moment, and then asked in a surprised voice. Qing Yili, who was drinking his wine, had paused a moment as well, before he slowly raised his eyes up to look towards her, his dark green eyes revealing a faint glimmer of hope. Chapter 60. 1. Coincidental encounter. Yin Ning Luo lifted up just one corner of her lips slightly, to reveal a beautiful smiling arc. There is a secret treasure in the faint mist sect that is called the all-seeing soul-tracing mirror. One will only need to focus all his thoughts to search for the person he wants to find, and no matter at which end of the world that person is, as long as his spirit soul has not dispersed, the mirror will show how the person looks like and the location of the person. Bellied then opened his mouth to exclaim in surprise. "There's really such an amazing treasure?" The all-seeing soul-tracing mirror was what gave the faint mist sect the ability to be able to apprehend all the traitors that betrayed the faint mist sect and had fled thousands of miles away, regardless of how they had changed their looks or changed their identities and assumed other lives. They were all still unable to escape from being seen through by the all-seeing soul-tracing mirror. Qing Yili's face under the mask froze for an instant as his gaze finally came to fall upon the young lady directly across the table. His voice deep, he then asked, "I wonder if Princess Ningfeng would be able to borrow that secret treasure for this duke's use." Of course. It was only at that moment that it felt as if an image of her had finally come to show in the man's eyes. Yin Ning Luo smiled reservedly and nodded her head. "I'll send word to my master when I get back, and I'm sure he'll agree to it. But as the journey from the faint mist sect is long and far, we might have to wait for a few days." "That's all right." Qing Yili was always miserly with his words, and this was an instant he could be considered to be talkative. A person that was able to make him come out to search for himself must be someone very important. Although she was curious, she was smart enough to not probe. Coincidentally, in the room just opposite them, was Bai Jiyin and that lazy gray-robed man. After Qing Yu left the gathered cloud loft that day, a certain person had flown into an unrestrainable rage, and anyone that came into his path was not spared. Bai Jiyin howled and complained of the incessant aggrievement he had to suffer, and he then finally chose to hide himself outside for the past few days, not daring to return, afraid that he would take up the role of being a punching bag. The gray-robed man had been gorging himself silly when he suddenly lifted up his eyes to see a familiar figure. "What?" Bai Jiyin asked, his face filled with surprise. To think that this fella who only knew to eat and sleep would actually come to pay attention to something else. "That man." The gray-robed man pointed his finger, the expression on his face too profound to read. Bai Jiyin turned to look, and his eyes saw a masked man with silver hair who exuded an icy air, causing him to be rather taken aback a moment. Although the man was rather strange and bizarre, but that still shouldn't be enough to make that lazy bum look up and take notice. "The day when I was bringing the little lass back, I saw that guy just outside, like he was charging his way in towards the little lass, and the defensive barrier outside had just been broken," the gray-robed man said as he grabbed up a chicken drumstick. I was unable to determine his cultivation, but I can be certain he is very strong. He could very well be one of the little lass enemies as well. But the young lass doesn't look like a person who would attract so much hatred, does she? Bai Jiyin said a little doubtfully. But that is still a valid suspicious point. I must remember to remind her of this the next time. Although this fellow was usually not dependable, always so lazy like he had no bones in him, his skills were not to be underestimated, where there were not many in Cloud Heaven who was his match. So if even he was saying that the man was strong, then it would seem like that man was definitely not any ordinary character. Bai Jiyin glanced into the room opposite again and raised his fingers up to rub his chin. Has this low-level lands recently turned fragrant and appetizing? There was really quite a good number of strong and capable persons gathered here at the same time. Here in the left Prime Minister's manor, even the third brother of Yu Xiaoning, who she cared the least about, had come to notice that something wasn't right. The playboy who was known throughout the entire imperial capital had seemingly not been seen appearing among the smoky red light districts, but had instead been staying at home, cultivating his body and mind. That's right, cultivating body and mind. According to Yu Jingzhua's words, he wants to be a man of culture from now on. Chapter 60. 2. Coincidental encounter. With that, when Yu Xiaoning heard those words, she was so astounded that she was not even piqued when presented with the chance to earn money, but had just stared blankly at the man who was a perfect copy of a refined scholar before the table. She wouldn't have said it, but when he became serious, he really had a little bit of the flair of a noble young master. Although he was always up to anomalous antics, but he had received proper schooling and was well learned. Third brother, tell me good and proper now. What kind of huge setback did you come to suffer? Or have you been possessed by some sort of devilry? Yu Xiaoning then stretched her hand out worriedly to feel his forehead. Shoo shoo shoo, go to the side and play. Don't come disturb me here. Yu Jingzhua smacked her hand away and said impatiently. Yu Xiaoning blinked her large, lively eyes, her face sly. Tell me whether it is because you lost a bet to that Mo Fei Ran fellow, with the penalty being that you have to shut yourself in to self-reflect, and you're not to go pleasure-seeking outside? Yu Jingzhua was tickled into laughter by those words. That guy? This lord here has never lost a bet. Then why? Yu Xiaoning asked with a scornful glance at him. If you had not lost a bet that forced you suddenly to change so suddenly, don't tell me that spring has come in your life and you found the one? Thinking about it, it was not possible at all, you know? Her elder brother was too big a playboy. Who would have guessed that the moment those words left her mouth, Yu Jingzhua's expression became startled and he murmured, Is it that obvious? It had just been a blind and wild stab and she had gotten it right? You. Tell me the whole truth now. Which family's young lady are you thinking of harming? Su Xiaoning's pair of almond-shaped eyes were wide, as she questioned aggressively. What do you mean by harming? It is called meeting the right person, all right? Yu Jingzhua looked at her with a sideways glance, and then seeming to have thought of something, the corner of his lips lifted up in a smile. The way Yu Xiaoning saw it, the smile looked incredibly sheepish. Ning, if you are to see the lady, I think you will be even more astounded than me. What? She's someone I know? Yu Xiaoning arched up an eyebrow to ask. I don't know if you know her, but she is of one family with your best friend, Princess Ningfeng, though. Yu Jingzhua slowly revealed that fact. A lady from the Eternal Peace Duke Manor? Yu Xiaoning blinked her eyes. Based on my knowledge, there is a total of 5 young ladies in the Eternal Peace Duke Manor. Besides little Ning, the other ones who possessed rather good looks would be Yin Shiro and Yin Shiwu. The 5th young miss is sickly and has never stepped out through their doors before. The last one is still very young, just past 10 years of age. So, can third brother tell me which one caught your eye? None of them. Yu Jingzhua shook his head. Could you have possibly grown fond of a servant maid in there? Yu Xiaoning exclaimed, highly frustrated. Yu Jingzhua rolled his eyes at her. What a joke. Will someone Yin Shichang has personally introduced as his sister be a servant maid? If you don't believe me, I'll bring you to the Eternal Peace Duke Manor one of these days to go have a look. The looks that young lady possesses is in no way inferior to Yin Ning Luo at all. When he came to speak of that, he then massaged his brows rather helplessly. But it's just that her personality is a little cold. Hehehe. A lady who is colder than Little Ning? This is getting interesting. Why wait for another day? Third brother, why not we go bum a meal off the Eternal Peace Duke Manor today, and we can go see this beauty you were telling me about as well. Yu Xiaoning's personality had always been rather feisty and impatient. After whetting her appetite like this, how could she be expected to still sit back and wait? Do you think that is a good idea? Yu Jingjue then said hesitantly. Actually, he was afraid that he would come to leave a bad impression before the young lady once more, and that would gain him nothing at all. Just tell me whether you would like to see her. I do. Isn't that good enough? What are you still dawdling for? Wait here, and I'll go get the carriage readied. It might be because Yinning Luo was able to help him find the person he sought. Qing Yili's attitude towards her came to improve a little. So when she extended an invitation to Yu Xian Yin and Qing Yili to come visit the Eternal Peace Duke Manor as her guests, on this rare occasion, Qing Yili agreed to it. Chapter 60. 3. Coincidental encounter. Of course, Bellied Ji Ran, who loved to be part of everything, was not to be left out. After getting to know that Qing Yili would be going to the Eternal Peace Duke Manor today, he had just showed how thick-skinned he could be by tagging along. And the reason for that was not known. Even though that man's personality was so cold and emotionless, where the amount of words he uttered over those several days might not even reach 10. But maybe Bellied Ji Ran was just born with an innate shamelessness in him, where he did not mind that chilly face at all, playing the role of the inseparable leech very well. The horse carriage slowly trundled along and came to main doors of the Eternal Peace Duke Manor. A small little fair-skinned hand lifted the carriage curtain, and without even waiting for the coach driver to bring the carriage to a complete stop, a light blue figure jumped down from inside. Coming right behind was the suave and handsome white-robed Bellied Ji Ran. He looked at the young lady before him with a measuring gaze and said, "The 9th princess really doesn't bother herself with trifling things. Such a lively bundle of joy." Yu Xian Yin raised an eyebrow, her azure blue eyes bright with a rippling gleam, beautiful like the reflection off water's surface. "Thanks for the compliment." Bellied Ji Ran almost swooned from those beautiful and mesmerizing eyes, and he quickly steadied himself. The feng shui of the water edges was indeed nourishing. Their people are all so beautiful looking he could not find the words to describe them. After Yu Xian Yin jumped off, she then obediently ran up to the front of the horse carriage to wait for Qing Yili to come down. The man was dressed in a black brocade robe today, his stature tall and slender, the head of silver hair a striking contrast like snow against those black clothes. Ice wolf-shaped face mask revealed a perfectly shaped jawline and red thin lips, his lustrous green eyes noble and mysterious. Inside the Eternal Peace Duke Manor, all the servants have been told that a very important guest would be coming today. They were all to pay careful attention to their actions and watch their words, so as to not offend the important guest. Everyone was initially very curious just what kind of an important guest it was that they all had to be warned so sternly. Even when the crown prince came, they had not been told in such a serious tone. Hence, though they were worried on one hand, they were also filled with eager anticipation on the other. Although they were all busy with their own tasks, but they could not hold down their curiosity as their eyes turned to look inquisitively all around. And it was exactly because of their inquisitive glances that caused all their faces to change in color immediately, the hair on the back of their necks standing up in an instant. That man with his head of silver hair and that mask, that was the devil that not a single person did not know about, where even kids would cry from fright of the Duke of Vast Seas. Every one of them just wanted to cry at that moment. Why would this god of slaughter come to descend upon their Eternal Peace Duke Manor today? "You're all here. Come right in." A gentle and charming voice of a woman slowly reached them, where Yinning Luo then came walking out slowly from the side. The young lady, who was as chilly as a goddess, was in a deep red flowy dress today, its 2 sleeves decorated with exquisite falbala trim at the edges, which looked elegant and vibrant. The slim fit of the design at the waist, making her already slender waist seem even more delicate and fragile. It might be because they had never seen such a stunning and enchanting Yinning Luo wear in that instant. Even the people from the Duke's Manor who had seen her so often were immediately dazzled in their spots with awe. The young lady's dressing elevated the beauty of that face that could bring cities and kingdoms to their knees to new heights, adding a good measure of alluring seduction. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Bailey G. Ran was the first one to break that atmosphere as he said with a laugh, Princess Ningfeng is indeed the greatest beauty. Her beautiful looks and exquisite grace not one ordinary people could hope to compare with. Yin Ning Luo smiled faintly, her gaze imperceptibly passing over the figure of that cold and indifferent man. Bailey G. Rant's manner of words will cause the ninth princess to be displeased. Uxian Yin played along and shot a gaze out of the corner of her eyes at him. That's right. Isn't this princess here beautiful then? Ninth princess, your humble one had just praised that you are very lively and adorable moments ago. Chapter 61. 1. He's called Qing Yi Li. How is that the same? Uxian Yin glanced at him. When you said this princess here is lively and adorable, aren't you also saying that I'm just like a child and not all that womanly? Bailey G. Ran choked on his breath. This little one is really quite a handful. Let's go in. Standing out here by the doors seems a little inappropriate. Qing Yi Li said emotionlessly, interrupting the two of them and then making his way inside on his own. It was only with that Uxian Yin then let Bailey G. Ran off and went inside together with Qing Yi Li. Bailey G. Ran rubbed his nose, feeling a little helpless. To think that there would be a day that his gift of the gab, his eloquent and witty tongue that charmed both men and women would fail him. As Yin Su and Yin Shicheng held official positions, besides having to attend the imperial court on most days, they had many other duties to handle as well. Hence they were both not in the manor, with everything left in Yin Ning Luo's hands to manage. The women in the inner courtyard had all received news of this, and they were all eager to go to the main hall out front to have a look. However, Yin Ning Luo had made it clear before that the important guest today was beyond extraordinary, and if they came to cause any affront to the guest, it would not be just simply be a light punishment that would be dealt on them. With those words told to them in no uncertain terms, no matter how much they were unable to suppress the urge in their hearts, they did not dare to even step out to the front casually. The people coming today were to be a revered duke and a princess from another kingdom. Although Qing Yi Li had always kept a low profile, but with his illustrious identity and the widely spread assassination attempt from before, his closest aide and his chief of guards just could not allow him and the ninth princess to go out alone. Although this was the Eternal Peace Duke Manor, the most closely guarded place outside of the imperial palace, no one could guarantee that any unexpected accidents would not occur. So the chief of guards had picked a small team of the most elite to protect the duke closely, which would not draw so much attention, their numbers totaling only 15, including the chief of guards himself. The team of guards were all dressed in valiant and refreshing blue armor, all of them tall and highly resplendent, an eye-catching sight. The young maids were all blushing red as they passed, their made-up faces and rouged cheeks seductive-looking. Qing Bei had sat cross-legged in his room to meditate and cultivate his powers the entire night, and although he had not slept at all throughout it, he was still feeling energetic. It was easy to go without sleep once one reached a certain level. By the time he came out, the servant maid had already gotten breakfast prepared and was waiting respectfully at the side. Second young master, your morning meal is ready. After a while, Qing Yu came in from outside. She was wearing a very simple and plain white workwear, highly different from the graceful dresses she usually wore. Her hair was tied up high upon her head, her exquisite and beautiful countenance tinged with a certain handsomeness from the thin sheen of perspiration over her cheeks. What have you been doing? Qing Bei asked, looking at her in surprise. Qing Yu poured out a cup of tea moist in her throat before she said with helplessness, Didn't you say my herb beds were all dead? So I cleared them all up and replanted a new batch of fresh. Qing Bei clicked his tongue in exasperation. Shouldn't you have just let it to the servants? But why would you need to replant a new batch? Hearing that, Qing Yu rolled her eyes helplessly. Those little babies of mine all contain lethal poison, and I am the only one who knows how to handle them. Any person who touches them will instantly die, and I do not want anyone to lose their life here in the tranquil abode. And also because they are pretty to look at, and it puts me in a good mood when I see them. Truly an answer that he was unable to refute. The two of them were enjoying their breakfast when the familiar voice that they always heard before they would see the person rang out. Little sister Qing Yu. That overly sweet voice was none other than Yin Shirua, with her signature pink dress, like a fluttering pink butterfly, a sweet-looking young lady. Behind her was Yin Shiwu in a light blue dress. The two of them were always not too far away from each other. They were clearly not as close as they showed themselves to be on the surface, but they still stuck to each other all the time, which was just puzzling to people. Hearing that voice, Qingyu froze for a moment, before she raised up an eyebrow as she turned to look. Something our two elder sisters need? Chapter 61. 2. He's called. Qingyi Li. Upon seeing Qingyu again, the two of them were again bedazzled by her heaven-defying beauty for a moment. They then turned to look at the similarly good-looking youth with his handsome features and said, "Is this little Bei? We haven't seen you for a number of years, and you've become more and more handsome." Qingyu was speechless. And so was Qingbei. Have these two people come here to make clowns out of themselves? With the tranquil abode in such a faraway place, could they possibly have come all the way here just to praise them for their looks? The two sisters did not seem to have noticed their faces, and Yin Shirua acted all too familiar, coming to sit herself down beside Qingyu, holding her arm intimately. "Qingyu, after breakfast, let's go out for a stroll together." Qingyu's face was flabbergasted as the youth opposite her gave her a deep, meaningful glance with his eyes. Could these two women possibly thought up some dumb idea to bring us trouble again? It doesn't look like it. Moreover, after the last time, they have been rather friendly to me. You can see a person and his face, but you can't see into their hearts. They must have dreamt up an idea to make you go out and humiliate yourself. This is not the first time they have done this. Grow a memory for heaven's sake. Qingbei immediately thought back to the Qingyu from 6 years ago, where she had foolishly been played and toyed by these very two sisters. Seeing that Qingyu had not responded to her, Yin Shirua became a little anxious. "Qingyu, do you know that we have a very important guest in our manor today?" Important guest? As the tranquil abode was far away from the main hall, they had not heard any news about that. "That's right. Do you know who it is?" Qingyu raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "It's the 9th princess and the Duke of Vast Seas. Don't you just want to go have a look?" Yin Shiro looked at her excitedly. Yin Shirua had greatly admired all those famous heroes from a young age, and even with the Duke of Vast Seas' notorious infamy, she was still as infatuated with him as ever. She had been seated so far away from him at the banquet previously, and she had not even been able to see him clearly. But this time, he had come right into the Eternal Peace Duke Manor itself. How could she not be excited by that? She would finally be able to see Qingyi close up. "The Duke of Vast Sea is here?" These words suddenly tumbled out. Qingyu had not shown much of a reaction, but it was instead Qingbei who had been casting a highly impatient gaze upon the pair of sisters, who was astounded a moment, before he then asked in shock. Yin Shiro immediately saw that opportunity, and she struck while the iron was still hot. "Little wants to go see as well, don't you? The Duke of Vast Seas is not someone people are able to meet that easily. He will be returning to the Water Edge Kingdom in a few days, and there wouldn't be another chance to see him then. Rumors abound out there about how terrifying that man was, but these few people here seem to worship and like him quite a lot." Qingyu arched up an eyebrow thoughtfully and then said with a smile, "Since my elder sisters want to see the Duke of Vast Sea, why are you not going on your own but have come to ask me along?" Once those words came out, Yin Shiro's face immediately twisted up with rage. It was Yin Shiwu who quickly opened her mouth to explain. "Because Yinning Luo gave orders that no one is to go to the main hall today, setting the area out of bounds for us. She is the eldest daughter, and we do not dare defy her." "Then what will I be able to do about that?" Qingyu then asked with a helpless face. "It is of course different for you." Yin Shiwu's tone subconsciously became excited as she spoke, before seeming to realize she might have gotten caught up in the heat of the moment, where she quickly restrained herself a little. "Father has personally given his orders, and no one will dare to stop you at all. With the exception Yinning Luo, your words carry the most authority in this manner." "Is that so?" Qingyu rubbed her chin with one hand. Her alluring eyes casually narrowed lazily. "But I do not want to go see whoever that Duke of Vast Sea at all. And the main hall is so far away from here. The time taken will be enough for me to have an afternoon nap under the sun instead." "But—" Chapter 61. 3. He's called Qing Li. What I think is that besides having looks that stand out from most people, which makes him a rare sight to everyone, isn't the Duke of Vast Sea just a person with one nose and two eyes like everyone else? Nothing all that interesting to see at all. As she spoke, Qing Yu even let out a lazy yawn. On Yin Shirua's face, it was written, "How could there be someone that can be so uninterested in the Duke of Vast Sea?" Even Yin Shiwu, who was always able to hide her emotions, was stunned for a moment, seeming like she had not expected such a reaction. The two sisters continued to persuade for a long while, but Qing Yu remained unmoved, which infuriated the pair of sisters to no end. They felt so much like saying some unpleasant words to vent their frustration, but when they gazed upon that flawlessly beautiful face, they just could not bring themselves to do it, and they just left the place in a huff. Seeing their angry backs leaving in helpless rage, Qing Yu could not help but burst out in laughter. "Sis, are you really not curious about the Duke of Vast Sea in the least?" Qing Bei asked, looking at her in amazement, like he was looking at a person from another world, though she had indeed come from a different world. Huh. Qing Yu blinked her eyes at him blankly. Why should I be curious? Right from the beginning, she had already shown that she did not care about it at all. But if I were to tell you about his exploits, then you will definitely come to develop an interest in this person, Qing Bei said, his face resolute and certain. Oh, tell me something about him then. Let's not mention anything else yet, but it is rumored that the Duke of Vast Sea had descended from another world as well. He's not from our world. Qing Yu was a little surprised. From another world? So coincidental? That's right. He came to the Water Edge Kingdom more than 10 years ago, and he was immediately bestowed with the title as the Duke of Vast Sea, a position that put him above all people, second to just one man. More than 10 years ago, the Water Edge Kingdom was locked in a period of tumultuous war. But after the Duke of Vast Sea appeared, he immediately quelled the situation in the Water Edge Kingdom. If not for an unexpected incident 7 years ago, the Water Edge Kingdom would now be the leader among the three kingdoms. The Water Edge Kingdom has an emperor with unsurpassed intelligence and a highly meticulous mind. Together with the support from such a powerful Duke of Vast Sea, it was only natural that they would become the leader among the most powerful kingdoms. Qing Yu nodded her head after hearing that and said, "He is indeed a great talent." But how had his infamy as the god of slaughter come about? It was when the Duke of Vast Sea was supporting the new emperor to ascend to the throne. A group of rebels had attempted to strike at the frail and sickly new emperor, and in a fit of rage, the Duke of Vast Sea had washed the entire imperial palace with blood. It was said that red blood stained a great part of the sea before palace, and that was how he got that name. Qing Bei was indeed a loyal fan of the Duke of Vast Sea, who truly knew a lot about the man. It seems to me that he is not as cruel and brutal as the rumors say, just falsehoods spread by hearsay. Qing Yu commented in understanding. It is just a case of differing views among different people, Qing Bei said sagely, before he suddenly laughed and continued to say, but there is one thing that I think is a great coincidence. Qing Yu smiled and lifted her teacup to take a light sip before she asked, "What?" "The Duke of Vast Sea has a special surname that is just like ours. His surname is Qing." Qing. Qing Yu's expression became flustered for an instant, suddenly having thought of something. The youth had not noticed her change of expression as he went on to say, "That's right. He is called Qing Li." The slender fingers froze, and the teacup slipped out from her grasp to fall onto the floor, resulting in a crash. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qing Bei was startled, and seeing that the expression on her face did not seem right, he asked with great concern, "Sis, are you all right?" Qing Yu came back to her senses and picked up another cup to fill it up. She took a big gulp of the tea and then said, "I'm fine. I did not hear you clearly just now. What did you say the Duke of Vast Sea is called again?" "Oh, his name is Qing Li, but as very few people dare to address him by his name. As time passed, not many people can remember it anymore. His name is Qing Li." Chapter 62. 1. Do you know, I've been looking for you. Qing Bei had very rarely seen her lose her composure like this, and he could not help but feel puzzled as he asked, "What, have you heard of the name before?" Qing Yu lowered her eyes and gave a light laugh. "No, Just thought it sounded familiar, that's all. How could she possibly have not heard that name? Qingyi, that was a name she had given out herself. Hearing that name again after so many years, it felt as if it was from several eons ago. It probably wouldn't be that coincidental, would it? It had clearly been someone she would never ever meet again. But whenever she came to remember, her heart still felt a twinge of regret and longing. Towards the concerned gaze of the youth in front of her, Qingyu gave him a reassuring smile. But right at that moment, a voice suddenly rose up out of nowhere. "Little you, where can you be? Do you know that I have been looking for you?" The arc at the corners of Qingyu's lips immediately froze. On the other side, Yinning Luo was chatting with Qingyi and the other guests when an enchanting and pleasing voice sounded out from a far distance away to reach them. "Little Ning, I've come to see you." A pretty young lady in a light purple chiffon dress then came to show up in their eyes, causing many of their eyes to brighten up. Yu Xiaoning had highly lively looks, and her facial features were exquisitely good-looking. She often wore a smile on her face, with 2 adorable little dimples, making her extremely likable, drawing people's hearts to her easily. Yinning Luo looked at her, her eyes showing a tinge of smiles as well. "Ning Ning." After Yu Xiaoning came in, Yu Jingjue came following in right behind her. He was wearing a sky-blue brocade robe, his body tall and slender with a handsome and sunny disposition. It was not known whether it was because he had been cultivating and recuperating his morals and body. He was exuding a faint elegance like lustrous jade. Yinning Luo arched up an eyebrow in surprise. "A rare guest. But my elder brother is not in the manor at the moment. I'm afraid that you will have to wait for quite a while before he'll be back." It's fine. My third brother came purely because he's accompanying me today." Yu Xiaoning quickly answered for him, and then suddenly came to see the several other people in there. Her face turned to shock as her eyes bulged. "Ninth Princess? The Duke of Vast Sea? What are you doing here?" The young lady's expression was just too adorable. Her big eyes were clearly telling everyone. Have my eyes been seeing where I was going? Have I come to the wrong place? Bellied ran immediately burst out laughing, unable to hold it in. Yu Xianyan was also beaming with a wide arc on her lips. Only Qingyi was still indifferent and expressionless, showing neither delight nor rage. Yinning Luo was also almost driven into laughter by her exaggerated reaction. But in order to maintain propriety and manners, she merely curled up her lips and said, "I invited the ninth princess and the others to come visit the Duke's manor here today. And by a stroke of coincidence, you have the honor to meet them today as well." But she has no intention of wanting to see that detestable Duke of Vast Sea at all right? Towards the Duke of Vast Sea, who had destroyed the first restaurant she had opened after so much effort back then, she was still feeling highly bitter about it. This was a perfect example of a red-eyed meeting between enemies. The most hateful thing was not just the destruction of the restaurant, but it was when she had gone to reason with the culprit who had committed a deed so heartless and devoid of conscience. The other party had very calmly given her just 3 words in response. He had asked, "Who are you?" That's right. He had so callously asked her who she was without feeling the slightest remorse. That had set the base for an irreparable feud. Yinning Luo knew what she was angry about, and she walked over to pull her aside with a laugh before she said in a low whisper, "All right, don't be petty and small-minded now. You must not be seen as a joke to them. They are guests here. I am not holding it against him here only because of you," Yinning Luo said through tightly gritted teeth. Chapter 62. 2. Do you know, I've been searching for you, good. Ning Ning is the best, Yinning Luo said encouragingly, where her gaze then spotted Yu Jingjue, who seemed highly distracted and looked like he was eager to get out from there, which puzzled her. Why will your third brother accompany you to come over here today? She must not be blamed for being curious, as that fella's infamy as a rootless playboy really rang too loud, and it was hard to see his person all the time. He was always either immersed in those smoky and hazy places seeking pleasure or engaged in drinking revelry with several friends, a gang of scoundrels making merry, the biggest hedonistic wastrel that everyone knew well. And the news that this biggest wastrel had recently mended his ways was no secret at all. Speaking about that, Yu Xiaoning then remembered the reason she had come here for, and her eyes lit up. Let me tell you, my third brother has his eyes set on one of the ladies in your eternal peace Duke Manor, and he has changed himself completely because of her. Isn't that just unbelievable? That was just as amazing as a rotten pebble turning into a priceless gem. Yin-Ning Luo's expression turned into astoundment, her gaze complicated as she turned to look at Yu Jingzhua. Yin Shi Ruo or Yin Shi Wu? Which one has he taken a liking to? Neither one of them. He said he met her back at the palace banquet. The image of a person came into Yin-Ning Luo's mind at that moment, but as Qing Yili was there, she did not give it any further thought. We'll speak of that later. Since you're here, sit down and have a meal with us. Yu Xiaoning sat down, and as luck would have it, with just one seat in between them, was Qing Yili. Her lips stiffened, a little unhappy, but she did not show it too much, but had gone on to chat with Yu Xian Yin beside her. Ninth Princess, I am Yu Xiaoning. Yu Xian Yin blinked her beautiful blue eyes. I know about you. The Green Wave Kingdom's most talented woman, a good friend of Princess Ningfeng's. So you've heard of me? Yu Xiaoning said happily with a smile, the two little dimples so adorable looking. She then cast a careful glance towards a particular man and went to lean in closer to say in a low voice, Does the Duke of Vast Sea have a bad temper? Seeing that he's always looking so cold and icy all the time. Yu Xian Yin looked at her in surprise, but was not angry. She smiled with stiffened lips and then said, Big Brother Yi Li is a very good person. You'll come to know that after you come to interact with him. Yui Xiaoning rubbed the goosebumps rising up over her arms, showing that she thought that scenario to be a horrifying one. Qing Yili looked expressionlessly outside the door, his gaze far distant for an instant. Bellied ran beside him was saying something to him, and he was not paying attention to him at all. It was just for a very brief instant that a strange feeling in his heart seemed to be pointing out the way to him. In just a few moments, the servant maids who have been waiting outside the doors heard the order for them to bring in the delicious and exquisitely prepared delicacies in turn, to be arranged upon the enormous round table. The dishes have been served. Let's have something to eat. Yin-Ning Luo opened her mouth to say gently, her gaze then turning to look at Qing Yili directly opposite her. Seeing that he looked a little distracted, she called out to him. Qing Yili, the Eternal Peace Duke Manor's head chef, has great cooking skills. You should have a taste and see how it compares to the food in your Water Edge Kingdom. Qing Yili raised his head up slightly, his voice magnetic and cold, filled with a different kind of attraction in its tenor. Thank you, Princess Ningfeng, for your kind hospitality. The atmosphere at the table immediately became a little strange in that instant. It was the first time they were hearing someone call the Duke of Vast Sea by his name. No, it should be the second time. Back at the palace banquet, Yin-Ning Luo had already addressed him like that once. Her tone had been so unbelievably natural, and the Duke of Vast Sea had silently acknowledged it. Everyone's eyes could not hide their gaze, secretly measuring the situation, seeking to spot anything strange or fishy. Chapter 62. 3. Do you know? I've been searching for you. The warm sunlight spilled in through the window, and Qing Yu, who was resting with her eyes closed, heard slight movements. Raising her eyes to look, a beautiful bright-colored bird fluttered its wings as it stood on the window ledge, its green eyes looking around back and forth in a highly human-like manner. Little one, where did you come from? Qing Yu asked with a smile. The little bird chirped a couple of times, stretching out its tiny little claw to reveal a tiny little bamboo tube tied to its leg. Is that the legendary message by homing pigeon? But anyway one looked at it, the bird did not look like a pigeon at all, but more like an expensive species the nobles kept as pets. She walked the few steps over there and stretched her hand out to retrieve the bamboo tube. The next instant, the bird had fluttered its wings and flew away, disappearing quickly before her eyes. Qing Yu raised up an eyebrow slightly, not paying it much attention as she went on to take the note out from the bamboo tube and unrolled it. The next second, the phoenix-like eyes that had been narrowed lazily glinted briefly, and the note was then turned into ashes in her palm. Little Bay, I'll be out for a while. The tranquil abode was in the most remote spot in the Eternal Peace Duke Manor, and for one to go outside from there, a person will need to use a horse carriage. Otherwise, Just walking to the main doors of the manor will take them an hour. But as there were guests here in the Duke's manor today, not many people were moving about within, which made it more convenient for Qingyu to move. She quickly employed a technique that shrunk the ground into inches for her, coming to reach near the main hall in just a mere moment, and it was just a few more steps away before she would be out through the door. Unintentionally, she then discovered Yin Shiro craning her neck to peek inside the main hall. Qingyu creased up her brows and quickened her steps, thinking to avoid her, but was however one step too late. Qingyu! Yin Shirua's eyes were wide as she stared, looking a little surprised, which then turned into anger. Didn't you say that you are not interested in seeing the Duke of Vastsea? And here you are on your own so sneakily. I don't care. Since you've come, we'll go in together. You are eager to see the Duke of Vastsea yourself anyway, so don't try to hide it anymore. Yin Shiro was already holding Qingyu's arm as she spoke, like she was deeply afraid that she would run away. She merely just want to go out. Qingyu showed an innocent smile. Elder sis, you've misunderstood. I ordered a dress to be made the day before, and I am just going out to pick it up. Is that so? Yin Shiro looked at her suspiciously. I'll believe you for now, but why not we do this? Let's go pay our greetings to the Duke of Vastsea first, and then I'll go with you to pick up your dress. How does that sound? She was thinking that when she was being admonished by Yinning Luo, she'll at least have Qingyu to be her shield. She's really just too clever. Qingyu's gaze turned to look at her a moment, and then she said obediently, All right, elder sis, you must not let go of me. I am a little nervous. Yin Shiro saw that she was indeed looking rather ill at ease and immediately thought that she was just shy, therefore relaxing her guard. All right then, I'll walk in front and you follow right behind me. You will not be nervous in that way. Anything my elder sis says. That highly obedient manner made Yin Shiro feel a great sense of satisfaction in her heart, and she then released her grip on Qingyu, before turning herself prettily to walk in front. In the next instant, she felt that something did not feel right, as that bashful and cooperative look was nothing like that languid and elegant young lady with a powerful presence from before it all. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yin Qingyu. That furious howl quickly startled the people having their meal inside, and Yinning Luo instinctively knitted up her brows as she called out, Who is that shouting outside? The servant maid standing outside the door immediately came in and said in a soft voice, It's the third young miss and the sixth young Mississippi. They seem to have gotten into an argument. Absolutely outrageous. Yinning Luo berated softly, and her eyes darkened before she said apologetically, Apologies. How embarrassing. Chapter 63. 1. You're so cruel outside the door. Qingyu massaged her brows, feeling rather helpless, her body leaning very casually against the tree. Judging from how loud you were, I believe you do not have to peek at them so sneakily anymore. They have all been called out here with your hollering. It was probably because the sun's rays that were shining on her felt too comfortable, and her beautiful foxy-looking eyes were narrowed lazily from the glare. With one hand cradling the back of her head, she struck a complete contrast against the other pink-clothed young lady, looking as beautiful as one depicted in a painting. That scene felt so highly familiar. Sometime in the past, she had seemed to have looked at someone, as she had similarly portrayed this same beautiful scene to that person's eyes. Big Brother Yi Li. The expression on Yu Xian Yan's face was startled as she looked at the black-robed man who was still exuding a chilly aura despite the bright sun shining down, walking one step at a time outside. This sudden action from him had shocked everyone there. And Qingyu's indifferent and languid expression suddenly turned cold. Her long phoenix-like eyes glinted sharply as she turned to look in a particular direction, her body tensing up in wariness as she faced the approaching danger. A massive and ferocious-looking beast had its jaws wide open as it moved at great speed, lunging viciously straight towards that tiny white figure, kicking up terrifying stir that was right about to tear everything in its path to shreds. No, it was not known whose shrill and broken scream it was, which turned hoarse and choked within the person's throat before the scream could complete. Time seemed to freeze right in that second. Before anyone could even react to that sudden and unexpected turn of events, They were all made to watch that exquisitely beautiful young lady about to die a violent death. The ferocious beast had pounced and landed right in front of her, its eyes that were as big as bronze bells malevolent. In the next instant, it raised its head to let out a roar into the skies, a roar filled with melancholy, and also delight from reunion after such a long time, tears flowing down from its beastly eyes. What a complete reversal! No one had thought that the young lady who should have died under the jaws of the beast would still be standing alive and well in front of them. Yin Shiruo had already fainted from fright the moment she saw the massive beast appear. Inversely, the white-clothed young lady who was merely a half-step away from the massive beast stood there with the expression on her face unchanged, as her mesmerizing phoenix-like eyes flashed with a conflicted glint towards that highly familiar presence. Even the golden-haired youth in her body could sense it, falling into shock and unable to recollect himself. It is the jade-eyed void-traversing beast? The massive, ferocious, and violent beast was as obedient as a kitten, plopped down before the young lady, its beastly eyes sparkling brightly and its heart filled with joy. This is just too unbelievable. After that shrill scream just now, Yu Xian Yan's face was at that moment showing pure and utter shock. This ferocious beast was Big Brother Yi Li's personal mount, rumored to be an ancient divine beast who was able to swallow the sky and block out the sun, an immensely powerful beast. Except for its master, it hated to come into close contact with anyone else, becoming highly ferocious. Over so many years, even she had only seen it a few times on occasion and had never gotten close to it before. Moreover, without its master's summons, it usually would not appear at all. But now, it seemed to have leapt out from its dimensional space on its own, and was being so close and friendly to the young lady like a close companion. Who is this young lady? Qing Yu leaned forward slightly, a hand stroking the massive beast on its head. The tense and stiffened body of the beast then relaxed and softened under the young lady's gentle strokes, as soothing purrs then came out of its mouth. It still likes you the most, no matter whether it was the past life or present. Even though she had changed her flesh body, that unique spirit soul of hers that was one of a kind could not be erased off. Hearing that voice, Qing Yu was taken aback, and she stood up. Her eyes darkening slightly, she asked, "Who are you really?" What that note had told her earlier was to be wary of this man that was now standing before her. That night during the All Saints' Day festival, when she faced the Demon King, this man had been just outside the barricaded spirit tower. Chapter 63. 2. You're so cruel. What was his objective? And why is this jade-eyed void-traversing beast here? The mysteries have been unraveled, and had the answers risen to the surface. And she was instinctively just unable to believe it. The corners of Qing Yi Li's lips showed an imperceptible hint of a arc, as he looked at that face he did not recognize at all, but held a pair of eyes that he knew so very well, her demeanor and gaze exactly identical to the girl he remembered in his mind. She was still alive and well, standing here right in front of him. How great is this? From everyone else's perspective, this scene just could not be any more shocking and astounding to them. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? The Duke of Vast Sea is actually speaking to a woman? A corner of Bellied's mouth twitched, thinking that he must be hallucinating. Yu Xian was probably the one who understood Qing Yi Li the most there, and she knew that this cold and emotionless man who was never prone to words towards everyone could not possibly do something so out of character without reason. And the reason was, she suddenly recalled something in that instant, her azure blue eyes becoming wide as she stared. This lady looks very much like the one in the painting. Although she had only seen it once, and she did not have a very impression about it, but the strange attire of the woman with her hair highly tied up and the special presence she had exuded was very much like this lady. After Yu Xian mentioned it, Bellied's gaze brightened. Really very much alike. Up till now, it could be said that this young lady was the closest match they have seen to that painting. From the moment that Qing Yi Li had started walking over, the shade on Yin Luo's face had already changed. How could Yin Qing Yu possibly know Qing Yi Li? And the two of them seemed to be on such familiar terms as well. Could something have happened during the years she was in the Faint Mist sect? No, impossible. A person who is so timid and weak with just a pretty-looking face could not possibly have anything that can even attract the gaze of Qing Yili. She will never allow such a thing to happen. But Yen Ning Luo's fingers clenched up tightly, her pretty-looking eyes turning gloomy. The young lass seems to have become different somehow. Just who are you? Really? Qing Yu unconsciously took a step back, her eyes locked upon the man before her. Under the menacing wolf-shaped mask, the pair of dark green eyes were like those of a beast, terrifying to see. Someone once told me that the Li in my name does not represent parting but reunion after a long time. Qing Yili parted his lips to say softly, his slender fingers slowly covering over the mask of his face, where he then took it off. From their angle, everyone could not see what he was doing at all, but only to see that he had actually taken off his mask. The Duke of Vast Sea had endless rumors spread about him, making him out to be almost godlike. Some have said that he was as hideous as a monstrous demon, while some have claimed that he was as handsome-looking as the gods, but no one has really seen his real countenance. However, on this very day, he had shown his looks that he had never revealed to people before, to a young lady he did not know. Under that mask was a face that was so fair the skin almost seemed translucent. Without the cover of the mask, that green pair of eyes looked more penetrating and enchanting, highly invasive. Over that fair complexion that looked rather pale were thin lips strikingly red like blood, as if they had been nourished by fresh red blood a countless number of times, to become so startlingly red. Before he had been transformed, Qing Yili was a refreshing and clean-looking youth with an elegant and handsome countenance. Now that he had grown green eyes and a full head of silver hair, together with the mark of a wolf's head with its fangs bared, his clean looks had been buried deep underneath, making him look demonic and evil. How did this happen? Qing Yu's eyes widened, seemingly unable to believe that the person before her eyes was the young youth she still remembered in her mind. Qing Yili did not seem to have seen the pained look in the young lady's eyes as his fingertips hesitantly touched her face. "You're so cruel, uttering those words that left me behind so easily, when you had clearly said you will never abandon me." Chapter 63. 3. "You're so cruel." The soft voice that was almost just muttering to himself and his action of gently caressing the young lady's face was a scene that should be so unbelievably lovely, but not the slightest bit of warmth could be felt for it. Those slender fingers clasped firmly around the young lady's thick neck in that instant, like he was going to snap off that brittle and fragile life within his grasp. Whoa, has that fella gone mad? Is that the person he has been trying to find? Finally finding the person after so long. Is he intending to kill her now? Bellied found his heart thumping and his skin crawl, the always suave and handsome face of his almost cracking. He can bear to kill such a beautiful-looking young lady? Big Brother Yili will not do that. Uxian Yin said with her brows knitted up. Although she knew the man as someone cold and emotionless, but he was not as brutal and cruel as what the rumors say about him. At least she knew that he was not one that would commit murder for no good reason. Moreover, this young lady could very well be the person he had been trying to find all this time. Everyone was concerned with the situation in front of them, but they were all helpless to do anything. When Qing Yili walked out there, he had already set a barrier array around himself, clearly to keep all of them out. Hence, all they could do was to watch with ants in their pants while they stood in their spots. Yen Ning Luo had stood there quietly as she listened to their conversation and had gained an understanding of the situation. The person that Qing Yili wanted to find was a woman, and the woman was someone who looked very much like Yen Qingyu. Then what kind of meaning did that woman hold to him? But no matter who that woman was, even if it was only as a substitute, that person must never be Yen Qingyu. This young lady's mother had already stolen all of her father's love back then, and now she has to go fight for the man she had loved for so many years with the daughter? If that was really the case, then she cannot be blamed for disregarding family ties. With her vital point clasped in someone's grasp, Qingyu did not become frantic with panic. She knew this man better than anyone else, and no matter when, he would always rather let harm come onto himself before he would allow her to suffer the slightest bit of pain. In those livid green eyes, there was nothing but pain. Feeling the strong pulse of life under the neck in his grasp, Qing Yili did not calm down but felt rage well up further inside instead. Till today, I can still vividly remember you all covered in blood, unmoving in my arms. Was I only a plaything that you casually picked up, and that was why you did not care what I would be like without you, and what kind of unbearable pain I would come to suffer? He was clearly not exerting that much strength, but the hand clasped around the young lady's neck was bulging with striking green veins. He was struggling very hard to suppress his feelings, but the man who never showed any emotions on his face was seemingly losing control of himself when facing this young woman. When they first met, the pair of eyes that had not contained the slightest sliver of humanity had then only seen the figure of one particular person ever since. Throughout the long, lonely passage of time, it felt as if only being by her side made him feel there was any meaning in living, and that the world was a beautiful place. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. He did not understand the complexities of humanity, but just possessed a pure and simple heart. He had immediately taken a liking to that young girl with that warm smile, willing to hand his back in her hands, willing to leave the place he had lived in from young. And it was just purely because of that liking that he unhesitatingly chose to follow and stay by her side, offering all of himself to her, including his very own life. But she had come to choose to die quietly away, leaving him to live in loneliness and solitude. To him, that was undoubtedly the most cruel form of punishment. Qingyu closed her eyes, unable to continue to listen anymore. His hand was trembling violently, which left several red marks on her neck under his fingers. Little Yi, I'm sorry. She had underestimated the blow her death had brought onto him, and underestimated just how deep his obsession had really been. Chapter 64. 1. Filled with rage as if cuckolded he was born different from others, it was thought that his transformation was just a matter of time. But if nothing unexpected happened, he might never ever transform. But her death had sped everything up and caused his transformation to be prematurely brought forward. Qingyu sighed a long sigh as she gently touched the trembling hand around her neck, to then say in a soft voice, Little Yi, I shouldn't have gone back on my word. I was tangled up with too many impediments in my previous life to be free, but fortunately the heavens has given me another chance to choose once more, where you and I are in the same world and we have come to meet each other. Qing Yi Li's eyes flashed with a glint, seemingly starting to relent. In the next instant, the expression on his face suddenly became startled as the hand that felt just as cold as it had in their previous life closed over his, lifting it up to press against her cheek and holding it there. See? It's warm. Do you believe what you are seeing now? I am still alive. The man's fingertips quivered, his eyes dark and unreadable, and his thin red lips then moved slightly as he asked in a slightly hoarse voice, Can I hug you? Not enough. This is still not enough. He wanted to truly be able to feel her real person and presence. Like in their previous life, he had not dared to go close to her. But on so many countless nights, he had just watched her sleeping face, not because he did not care enough for her, but was too afraid that he would lose that. If he had taken the first step and attempted to bridge that gulf, some things were impossible to revert to the way they were. Hence, he had never dared to hug her, but just only once, which was when she had been covered in blood, her breath gone from her dead body as she laid in his arms. In that pair of green eyes, there was a sense of longing and also unease. Qing Yu's gaze became more gentle, stretching her arms out lightly. The man was startled and dazed a moment before he embraced her hard into his arms, so tightly as if he was to crush her deep into his bones. The massive beast right beside them just watched curiously with its eyes widened, docile and obedient, not moving at all. That scene came to portray an indescribable beauty and harmony. The towering and muscular body of the black-robed man was locked in a tight embrace with the slender white-clothed young woman, his silver locks tangled together with the young lady's luxurious black tresses, their bodies indistinguishable. Although the expression on the man's face could not be seen, but it could clearly be felt from that incomparably cold and emotionless man's body, a kind of gentle and tender sentiment and the deep emotional attachment he felt towards the person he held within his embrace. They were clearly two people who couldn't possibly have met before, but standing together there, they looked just so compatible. This is the first time I am seeing Big Brother Yili like this, Uxian Yin said rather emotionally. Having known him for more than a decade, a man who had always been so icy cold, she just could not imagine seeing such a warm and endearing side of him. That person who was able to win a place in his heart was just so incredibly fortunate. Yu Xiaoning could not hold herself back from clicking her tongue and saying, "To think that that great big demon is even capable of love. I really pity the lady whom he comes to fall in love with." What a splendid-looking girl that was, and she had fallen into the wolf's den just like that. Yen Ning Luo was expressionless as she dug her fingernails into her palm. If that is the person you people are looking for, then I'm afraid the Duke of Vast Sea has mistaken her for someone else. Hearing that, Bellied ran, and Uxian Yin both turned to look at her, looking rather puzzled. Yen Ning Luo still maintained an appropriate smile on her face as she continued to say, "This girl is a commoner born from one of the Eternal Peace Duke Manor's concubine. Due to her timid and weak personality, she has kept herself inside this manor for all this time for the past 10 over years, never once having set foot out through the door. So how could she have possibly come to have met the Duke of Vast Sea before?" "Is that true?" Uxian Yin asked, raising an eyebrow, before she continued to ask. "But from what I saw, that young lady does not seem to be timid or frail at all. Did you see the moment when that ferocious beast appeared? She did not even panic in the slightest. Could someone with so much composure possibly be timid and weak?" Chapter 64. 2. Filled with rage as if cuckolded, the ninth princess' words are rather reasonable. Bailey G. Ran nodded his head in agreement. The young lady has an extraordinary air about her, and it is seen that she is intelligent and quick-witted with just one look. Even Yu Xiaoning was looking at her good friend in surprise. "Little Ning, she should at least be considered as your younger sister, right? Why does it look like you do not know her well? When I was ill previously, she had cured me of my condition, and even my third brother had said that she possessed great healing skills. And she had said that the young lady does not go out much." Although Yu Xiaoning had only seen the young lady outside once, but from the familiar and easy way she knew her way around, it would seem like she had been out and about many times. Yen Ning Luo looked at the two people locked in a tight embrace. The gaze of her clear and beautiful eyes then underwent many cryptic changes. A corner of her mouth then curled up on one side and her voice was soft and slow. "Looks like over the years I was in the faint mist sect, she must have met with quite a number of fortuitous encounters." It seemed like her claim of having a reclusive expert as her master carried more than a bit of truth to it. Otherwise, how could she possibly be able to gain this man's attention? But so what if that was the truth? Things that she could not get, by hook or by crook, must also never become that girl's. Mother had lost to that girl's mother back then, and she must definitely not lose to her now. What no one had noticed at all was Yu Jingzhua, who had initially come here with the sole purpose of seeing the young lady he had come to like. But he was now seeing her hug the Duke of Vast Sea like they had just been reunited after a very long time, and the blow to his heart was anything but trifling. As everyone's attention were all drawn to that scene, he then went on to depart from the Eternal Peace Duke Manor without a sound. Looks like he has been cultivating his body and mind for too long already. Alas, such a kind of life was not suitable for him, and it's better to continue living his life drunk and sleep when fallen into a dead stupor. In memory and condolences to the budding feelings of love that had been slaughtered before it had even begun. At that moment, Qing Yili then seemed to have ascertained it. Though after he released Qing Yu, his gaze still continued to be firmly fixed upon her. And Qing Yu, who had been on her way out for an appointment, had had her worries dispelled after ascertaining Qing Yili's identity. Since her concerns had been cleared up, there was no longer a need for her to go out, and she then decided to give the appointment a miss. Moments later, a gray figure then left the scene without anyone noticing. Gathered Cloudloft. "What did you say? That little lass knows the Duke of Vast Sea?" Bai Jiyin asked in surprise. As they did not see Qing Yu come over after so long, they had gotten the gray-robed man to go investigate. After the gray-robed man came back, He firstly poured out a big cup of water to gulp it all down before he said, "Not only does she know him, their relationship isn't just any ordinary one. The two of them were even locked in a long embrace." What? They embraced each other? Then what about Junyao? Bai Jiyin just exclaimed without thinking, before he immediately felt that something felt wrong. Why had he suddenly dragged Junyao into it? He had just been a little concerned about that little lass, and it had not seemed like anything special. The gray-robed man was shocked by that astounded look on Bai Jiyan's face, and he then raised up an eyebrow to gesture to Bai Jiyan, indicating for him to turn his head around to look behind. In the next second that he turned around, he immediately saw a noble and mysterious figure clad in lavish purple clothes as expected, seemingly having stood there for quite a while with his violet eyes narrowed cryptically, and it was not known what he was thinking, but just giving people the feeling that he was not a person to be trifled with at all. Finally, that man then opened his revered mouth. What is that person's name? The gray-robed man was rather taken aback. Since when had he ever bothered to ask about such trifling details? But he still went ahead to answer truthfully. Qing Yi Li. And he did not forget to add right after, "And I heard the little lass call him Little Yi." Just as he thought, the man's aura that had felt a little strange immediately felt a whole lot more oppressive, and the railings at the edge of the second level suddenly started to groan and creak painfully before they splintered into pieces and fell. Chapter 64. 3. Filled with rage as if cuckolded by Jiyan's body nimbly dodged far away, the corner of his mouth twitching as he looked at the mess scattered all over. Great lords! He had spent a fortune employing people to construct those railings. A few words he did not like to hear, and that guy is venting it out at his expense. Did that scoundrel think that his money was picked up from the streets? Go investigate into this person's background. Lu Junyao threw down those words, and then disappeared from his spot. Only the heavens knew where he had gone to find people for him to vent his rage on. Anyway, as long as one was around that highly temperamental fella, one would always be in jitters. Hee. The gray-robed man shook his head as he looked at the mess across the floor, and he then said in ridicule, "Why is the Lord becoming more and more childish?" The way he had looked earlier was exactly like someone who heard that his beloved had cuckolded him and had nowhere to vent his rage. Hearing that, Bai Jiyan looked at him stunned, and could not find the words to refute his words. What he said is really rather fitting. On another side, Qing Yi Li summoned the jade-eyed void traversing beast back into the spirit beast dimension and removed the surrounding barrier. Now that everyone was able to get closer, Uxian Yin was the first one to run over. Big brother Yi Li. Seeing her up close, Uxian Yin then came to discover that the young lady possessed such outstanding looks, so dominatingly beautiful and flamboyant, a kind of aggressive beauty that was hard to forget after seeing. Her simple and bare dressing instead gave her an added sense of valor, but was a little different from the lady in the painting. Though the elegance and demeanor felt very similar, she was more astoundingly beautiful. It was not known why, but Uxian Yin liked her exceptionally much though she was seeing her for the first time. Hence, she gave a sweet smile and said, "I am Uxian Yin." Qing Yu was a little surprised to see that sweet smile. The young princess had a highly contagious smile which put people in a good mood unconsciously, and Qing Yu smiled back faintly and said, "Ninth princess, I've heard of your great name. Just call me Uxian Yin." Uxian Yin said with a wink, and then continued to say playfully, "I had not thought that constantly bugging big brother Yi Li to come with me on this trip to the Green Wave Kingdom would yield such unexpected rewards. We really have not made the trip in vain. Big brother Yi Li has been searching for you for such a long time, so can I consider myself to have helped a great deal?" Qing Yi Li then lifted a corner of his mouth on this rare occasion and replied, "Can? Then are you going to reward me?" The young princess tilted her head and asked persistently, "What do you wish for?" Uxian Yan's witty blue eyes then turned. "I wonder if big brother Yi Li can bear to let this beautiful lady spar with me a little?" Hearing that, Qing Yi Li cast a helpless glance at the young princess and said, "This bad habit of wanting to spar with everyone you meet has got to be kicked." "Why? Can't bear to?" Uxian Yin widened her eyes in mock shock. "Not that. You are not her match," Qing Yi Li said indifferently. Seeing her face fill up with utter disbelief, Qingyu could not help but laugh softly. Ninth Princess in the past, your big brother Yi Li was not my match as well. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Euuxian Yin was completely astounded by those words as she looked at Qingyu Li. Is that true? And the man nodded his head. Only with that, was she then willing to give up on that idea? If even big brother Yi Li, who possessed such maniacal gift, had not been her match before, then just how terrifying could this young lady really be? Bailey Ji ran and Yin-Ning Luo then came walking over with the rest of the people. Compared to Bailey Ji Rant's and Yu Xiaoning's curiosity, Yin-Ning Luo's eyes were dark and gloomy. This was the first time that she was properly seeing Yin Qingyu, who had once been someone so insignificant. Chapter 65. 1. Qingyu Li's prejudice. Qingyu had naturally noticed the elder sister she was meeting for the first time and saw that her eyes were filled with nothing but enmity, which rather puzzled her, not knowing what kind of grudge she could be holding against her. Yin-Ning Luo restrained the dark glint in her eyes, and the ends of her lips curled up into a smile. I have not come back for quite a number of years, and I'm afraid that little sister Qingyu might not recognize your elder sister anymore, do you? A girl really changes drastically as she grows up. I remember that you were so skinny and small before, and you have now grown to become so beautiful and enchanting. Those words clearly had a hidden meaning behind them, but one just could not find any fault in them. But people who had clear eyes would be able to see that those words would seem to be directed straight against Qingyu. Qingyu Li's gaze flashed and seemed like he wanted to say something, but he was stopped by the young lady right beside him. He had always looked up to her, and he would not allow anyone to show her the slightest disrespect. Although Yin-Ning Luo's words were said to Qing Wai, but her gaze was always indistinctly drifting over to rest upon Qingyu Li. And Qingyu was smart enough, as adding her two lives together she would have lived for several decades already. So how could she possibly not be able to see what the gaze in Yin-Ning Luo's eyes really meant? With that thought in mind, Qingyu tilted her head slightly to cast a deep and knowing glance at the man beside her. Qingyu Li was completely bewildered by the kind of gaze she was giving him, his eyes seemingly confused. Because Qingyu Li's countenance could not be casually revealed after his transformation, he had put his mask back on before everyone walked over to them. Only his luscious green eyes could be seen to be filled with bewilderment, like he did not understand why she was looking at him like this. Qingyu did not explain anything to him, but just smiled as she looked at Yin-Ning Luo. Thank you, elder sister, for the compliment, but compared to the Green Wave Kingdom's greatest beauty, I am still a long way behind. That response was humble and subdued, but the young lady's flawless and alluring beautiful countenance spoke for itself, which was just impossible to overlook. To be fair, Yin-Ning Luo was a beauty, and there was no doubt about that. Her beauty was more of a kind of stunning beauty upon seeing her, and seeing her from a distance made her look like an unreachable snow lotus high upon an unscalable mountain, giving off a feeling that people were not able to get close to. As for Qingyu, she was like a beautiful and alluring bloom of poppy, mesmerizing people who saw it and unable to extricate themselves, even though they knew it was poison, but just could not help wanting to get close to it. With that comparison, the winner was clear. So how was she anything like the timid and weak person that Yin-Ning Luo had said she was before? Even her manner of speech and choice of words were highly adept and intelligent. Hence, it could be seen that the gaze of Yin-Ning Luo's eyes then became rather complicated. This Yin Qingyu seems like a completely changed person. It was clearly still the same face she is seeing, but is no longer shy and hesitant, but confident and flamboyant. Was she really that steady and confident now? Yin-Ning Luo's fingers clenched up tightly into fists within her sleeves, but her smile remained the same. Let's not stand here to talk any longer. Otherwise, when father comes back, he will complain that I am not being a good host. Her voice paused for a moment before she said, Little sis Qing, you should come join us in the main hall for a meal as well. She was after all still a noble princess, and was able to win the sect chief's eye in the faint mist sect where there were countless highly skilled pugilists. Hence, Yin-Ning Luo's level of composure and grace was not to be underestimated. Even when her heart was wrecked by upheaval and turmoil, she was still able to hide it all without showing any signs. And towards Yin-Ning Luo's invitation, Qingyu merely smiled politely and then replied, I won't be able to. I had originally intended to go out, but now, since everything has been settled and little Bei's mobility is rather restricted, I need to go back to look after him. At such a moment, Qing Bei was undoubtedly a very good excuse to use. Hearing that, Qing Yili glanced at the young lady at his side, and upon receiving a meaningful look from each other that only the two of them understood, he then just watched her walk far away, unable to recover his senses for a long time. Chapter 65. 2. Qing Yili's prejudice till now. The fact that he had really just seen her felt so unreal. Yin-Ning Luo looked at the man's longing gaze and felt her chest becoming stifled and stuffed up, an uncomfortable feeling. When they returned back to the main hall, the atmosphere from earlier was gone, and everyone seemed to have lost the mood to enjoy the delicacies. Seeing that the atmosphere was getting highly oppressive, Bailey G. Rand just could not hold himself back from asking, that young lady just now is really the person you were searching for? Qing Yili looked at him and just went, without any expression. But doesn't she look rather different from the person in the painting? Bailey G. Rand then asked puzzledly. An accident occurred. Qing Yili did not explain it any further, but just brushed it off with that statement. I can't help but wonder, as this younger sister of mine usually remains at home and seldom goes out, how did the Duke of Vast Sea become acquainted with her? Yin-Ning Luo just could not make herself believe that the man she had loved all this time would be so fond of the person she had hated so much. Based on their conversation earlier, Qing Yili had always been searching for her, and he had been doing that for a long time. Then under all of that, what kind of things could have happened that she did not know about? The answer to this question burning in Yin-Ning Luo was not one that only Yin-Ning Luo sought to know, but one that everyone present would be curious about. However, the man was truly cold and emotionless to everyone else besides Qingyu. This is the personal business of this duke here, and it is not convenient to divulge anything. It was feared that the fact that Yin-Ning Luo likes Qing Yili was known only to Yu Xiaoning, a close friend who had grown up together with her, and there was nothing they could not talk to each other about. Hence, when Qing Yili threw out that cold and distant statement, Yu Xiaoning had cast a worried glance towards Yin-Ning Luo, to see her gaze turn dark for an instant, and her hand that was placed on the table tighten its grip. That cold face was one that Bailey G. Rand had seen a lot of times, and he thought nothing of it, but went on to say with a mischievous look on his face, It was the first time I saw you being so passionate. I thought I saw you embrace her so tightly, didn't you? Ha ha ha. Qing Yili continued to look at him expressionlessly till Bailey G. Rand shushed up. Sheesh. Do you have to look so terrifying? Can't you take a joke? Was there a need to look at him like he was about to be exterminated? Qing Yili ignored that gaze so filled with mournful aggrievement and just opened his mouth to say, Xine Yin, tell the guards to prepare themselves when we get back. We will be returning to the water edge in 2 days' time. Once those words came out, not to mention the others, but even Yu Xine Yin was taken aback. Why are we suddenly in such a hurry to go? The Green Wave Emperor has invited us to stay for 7 days, so don't you think that leaving just after a mere 3 days might not be very nice? That's right. Just because you've found the person you've been looking for. Are you so anxious to bring her back to the water edge, or what? Bailey G. Rand asked in bewilderment. This fellow was someone who wouldn't even step out of their borders for several years when in the water edge, and that was why the rumors about him grew more and more astounding. Even he himself had last seen the man several years ago, and if it wasn't for the All Saints Festival this day, it was feared that the man would not be seen for another several long years. I want to bring her back to Water Edge. Qing Yili said. Yin-Ning Luo could almost no longer maintain that appropriate smile on her face anymore as her fingers flexed and clenched, and she fought to suppress that anger rising in her chest. Isn't it rather inappropriate for the Duke of Vast Sea to do that? Yin Qingyu is a member of our Eternal Peace Duke Manor, and you cannot take her away. Yu Xiaoning beside her secretly tugged at Yin-Ning Luo, who was about to lose control of her emotions, and then opened her mouth to say, That's right. Regardless of how noble your identity as the Duke of Vast Sea is, a man who stands above all but just one in the Water Edge Kingdom, you cannot take another kingdom's citizen away as you please. This concerns the diplomatic relations between two kingdoms, and you cannot just do whatever you deem fit. Chapter 65. 3. Qing Yi Li's prejudice. I've already said that this is the personal business of this duke here, and no one has any right to interfere. The air around Qing Yi Li turned a little cold, his tall frame slowly standing up straight, and no emotion could be seen in that pair of green eyes. Her surname is not Yin. Her name is Qing Yu, and she is not from the Green Wave Kingdom. She belongs only in my world, and no one has ever been able to stop me from doing what I want. Those cold and harsh words that seemed to be declaring sovereignty immediately caused everyone to be startled. Qing Yili did not remain there any longer, but just turned to walk out from there. He had not forgotten the gaze that Qing Yu had looked at him with just before she left. Is he really going to take her away with him? After a long while, Yu Xiaoning then opened her mouth to ask. Yu Xinyan was looking a little confused as she said, Big Brother Yi Li has never asked for anything before, and the only thing he had relentlessly sought was just to find the person in that painting which had been going on for many years. He said that the person was someone very important to him, and I had thought, even if it isn't his beloved, then that person must at least be someone very close to him. And that was a decision he made that no one had been able to change at all. But she is a citizen of the Green Wave Kingdom, and the Duke of Eternal Peace will never agree to what he wants to do. Yu Xiaoning really did not want to see her good friend looking so dejected and sad, even if that Duke of Vast Sea did not like her, but what he was doing was really a little too much. Hearing those words made Bellied laugh out loud, where he then shrugged his shoulders in helplessness, fanning himself handsomely. It just shows that you do not understand Qing Yili very well. With the terrifying level of cultivation he possesses, and his personality where people who submit to him prospers and all who opposes him dies, if the Green Wave Emperor and the Duke of Eternal Peace does not agree, then he will definitely declare war between the two kingdoms in a fit of rage. Although he might just be a duke, but he holds in his hand the command over all the military might in the Water Edge Kingdom. The Water Edge Emperor places full trust in him, and he will not say a word if Qing Yili wants to declare war. Speaking about that, Bellied then paused a moment before he gazed meaningfully at everyone. If he had not coincidentally undergone a breakthrough to the next level 7 years ago, I fear that the Green Wave Kingdom would have become a country defeated in war today. Just how truly strong that man was still not known till today. As a strange star that fell from the heavens, even the astrologers, the mysterious readers of stars, were not able to predict his life's destiny, but only determined that his future was far beyond measure. Sis, you came back so fast? Are you done with your task? Qing Bei was reading a medical book and was poring over a profound phrase that was hard to understand when he inadvertently noticed Qing Yu had returned after just going out for a while, where he then said in surprise. Qing Yu saw how happy he was, and she curled up the ends of her mouth in a smile. I did not go out. Just took a stroll around and immediately came back. Why didn't you go out? Because the matter sorted itself out halfway through, Qing Yu said with a laugh. What are you reading? What do you not understand? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yugan. About the silver lantern grass, it is clearly highly poisonous, but it says here that it can help recover a frail person recover his vitality. But for someone who is so weak, their body would not have much immunity, so wouldn't the poison kill him? Qing Bei asked, unable to comprehend it no matter how hard he thought about it. You wouldn't know this now. Although it is a type of poisonous grass, the bodies of frail and weakened people would already be afflicted by illness, which would produce another type of poison. So when the two types of poison are combined, they would naturally counteract and neutralize each other's toxicity. So I see. Qing Bei nodded in understanding. The study of healing and poison is really amazing. Qing Bei was feeling glad when her entire body suddenly stiffened and her eyes widened, her face incredulous as she exclaimed in shock, The Duke of Vast Sea? Chapter 66. 1. Secret discussion. Qing Bei subconsciously felt a chill run through him, and he shot up onto his feet very quickly, the medical book in his hand falling to the ground with his sudden action. Greetings to the Duke of Vast Sea. Qing Yu was startled a moment by his action, and she then smiled helplessly. He was so excited that he was even stuttering. So this fellow admires little Yi so much. Qing Yili glanced expressionlessly at him and then said, No need for such formalities. Qing Bei then dared to straighten his back, the expression on his handsome face excited and filled with fervor. Qing Yu stretched her hand out and patted the youth on the back as she said with a laugh, "No need to be so nervous. He is a friend of mine, and you will see him often in future." "Friend?" Qing Bei looked at her in surprise. "But why have I not heard you mention that before? And when I spoke about the Duke of Vast Sea, your reaction had been calm and composed." "Because I had not recognized him yet then," Qing Yu said as she blinked her eyes innocently at him. "All right, you just continue reading your book. I have some things to discuss with Little Yi." Qing Bei stared dazedly as he watched the two people walk inside, and it was a good while before he regained his senses. What did his elder sis call the Duke of Vast Sea? Little Yi? In the room, Qing Yu immediately opened a hidden compartment under the dressing table at the side the moment she came in and took out a small black porcelain bottle. "Sit down." Qing Yi listened to her and sat himself down as he watched the young lady walk over to him to nimbly remove the mask on his face. Before his eyes that were seemingly rather puzzled, she pulled the stopper off and poured the transparent liquid inside out onto her palm, where she then gently covered it over the ferocious-looking wolf's head mark on his forehead, retracting her hand back only after a while. "What are you doing?" Qing Yi had always trusted her fully and completely, and he was not worried that she would do anything to harm him. Towards her actions, he was merely feeling rather puzzled. Qing Yu did not say anything, but just picked up a mirror from the side and handed it to him. Qing Yi raised his eyes to look into it and saw that his forehead was completely clear, without any traces of a mark. He lifted his hand to touch it, and he did not feel the protruding flesh like it was before. His green eyes gazed at her in shock. That mark, must not be seen by anyone. You were born different from normal humans, and the bloodthirstiness of the wolf tribe runs in your body. But you are also gifted with talents and intelligence 100 times better than others. I do not know whether it's a gift or a curse for you." Qing Yu sighed softly, her gaze helpless and conflicted. "If it wasn't because of me, you might never have to undergo such a transformation. From my perspective, it is good," Qing Yi said, holding her arm, his eyes looking straight at her. "At least I can possess sufficient strength to no longer need to see something happen to you before my eyes and be utterly helpless. I have no regrets turning to look like this, because I am finally holding enough power to protect you." "Little Yi." The young lady's eyes were faintly misty, like she was touched but at the same time, seemingly sympathetic. "This fella has really changed a lot. He was such a quiet and silent youth from before, and not to mention him being able to say such moving words, it was hard to even see him open his mouth at all. This is the first time that she is hearing him speak right from his heart. There is something I want to tell you." Qing Yi paused for a while, before he then slowly opened his mouth to speak. "What is it?" "I am thinking to bring you back with me to the Water Edge Kingdom." Qing Yi was taken aback, but she did not immediately reject. "Why?" "The Water Edge Kingdom is too far away from here, and if you come to meet with danger, I will not be able to rush here in time. Moreover, I have strongly held on to the belief that you are still alive all these years, and now that I've found you, I will naturally want to bring you back with me," Qing Yi said, his tone serious. Chapter 66. 2. Secret discussion. What kind of danger could I possibly encounter? Don't you believe in me? That time back at the barricaded spirit tower was dangerous enough. Qing Yi then seemed to have thought of something and his eyes darkened. "That day, who brought you away from there?" If not for the fact that someone had interfered that night, he would already have been reunited with Qing Yu and not have to waste so many more days for nothing. But for that person to be able to bring her away from there right under his eyes without him realizing, that person must surely be highly skilled. But how had Little Yu come to know this person? After he took the initiative to ask, Qing Yu immediately recalled about that woman who had disappeared into thin air. "Did you see a hideous-looking woman that day? Did you kill her?" "No. She detonated herself." Qing Yi furrowed up his brows, displeased that she was changing the topic. "You still have not answered me. Who was the person that brought you away?" Qing Yu was feeling a little helpless. "Someone not important. Anyway, I will not have any more dealings with them anymore. Why are you insisting on knowing for? Is the other party friend or foe? If it's an enemy, they will definitely become the root of much trouble in future. The man's calm and measured tone, together with those dangerously narrowed eyes, seemed to tell her that if she were to say it was an enemy, he would immediately want to root out the other party completely. Don't overthink it too much. I saved that person once before, and it can be considered I was their savior. So now, we're even and do not owe each other anything anymore. The other party is a person from one of Cloud Heaven's factions of power, and I have no intentions of establishing any links with them. I was drawn into trouble this time because of them, and that is why they sent someone to rescue me. I will keep my distance away from them from now onwards. You have become a lot less subdued, Qing Yili said, a little surprised by her words. She was arrogant and willful in the past and would never lie low and keep a low profile like this. Qing Yu twitched a corner of her mouth and said rather self-deprecatingly, "Reborn into another life, I would naturally treasure my life more. After all, I do not think that I will have the fortune to be able to be reborn once more." The atmosphere grew heavy, and Qing Yu did not want to continue to harp on that topic. She then asked quizzically, "When did you come to this world? And you become the Water Edge Kingdom's Duke of Vast Sea?" Hearing those words, Qing Yili's gaze turned dark as he replied in a deep voice, "The day you died." Qing Tianlin's humiliation turned into rage when he found out, and he did not even want to spare your dead body, seeking to use you as a cultivation vessel. After I got into a dispute with them, my body suddenly started to undergo a transformation, and I then lost my mind completely, killing everyone in the entire clan. My consciousness was blurry for a period, and when I woke up, I was already in the Water Edge Kingdom. It was the Emperor of the Water Edge Kingdom who saved me while I was unconscious at sea. Qing Tianlin was Qing Yu's elder step-brother born from a different mother. Although they were not born from the same mother, but in the large Qing family where there were innumerable numbers of branches, Qing Tianlin was closest to her among all other siblings, treating her very well ever since she was very young. Qing Yu had liked this elder brother who doted on her very much, and no matter what kind of a face she put on before others, when she was before him, Qing Yu was seen to be always the most innocent and guileless little girl. But ever since Qing Yu had been picked in the clan selection trials among more than 100 children to inherit the position to become the next clan head, Qing Tianlin's pure and innocent love towards her had then changed. Because the family clan's two secret treasures that had been handed down for several hundred years, the burial and the heavenly, were skills that only the current sitting clan head was able to inherit and cultivate, and besides the clan head, only the clan head's intimate partner was able to have access to these two secret treasures. Heavenly, burial hints. After Qing Yu was selected, she found herself suddenly having many more suitors who were seeking to get close to her. As a girl with exceptionally outstanding looks, she already had no lack of suitors, and when the news spread, the number of people who wanted to become her future husband became as many as carp in the river, like people blindly following a trend. Chapter 66. 3. Secret discussion, but in the end, it resulted in every single one of them being driven off by that elder brother who doted on his younger sister, and Qing Yu was actually rather moved by his actions at that time. But unknown to her, the elder brother she liked and respected had actually developed some insidious thoughts. Against all propriety and morals, vile and despicable thoughts of drugging her had come into his mind, to force her into an intimate relationship with him. And Qing Yu, who had never been guarded against her elder brother, would never have thought that he would ever do something like this. If it wasn't for Qing Yili, who was always watching her by her side, it was feared that the step-siblings might have broken the taboo by engaging in a licentious relationship. Even since then, the lively and innocent young girl who loved to laugh so much then seemed to grow up and mature in an instant, becoming cold and highly aloof. Hearing the name Qing Tianlin once again, Qing Yu's eyes dimmed for a brief moment, but recovered very quickly. "Is he dead?" "I'm not sure." Qing Yili knitted up his brows, seemingly a little vexed. "Not sure? What does that mean?" "I had injured him severely that day, and all his meridians had been completely severed. He was struggling on his last breaths, but he stopped breathing very abruptly. I felt that was rather suspicious, as my impression of him was that he was not someone who would die so easily." Qing Yu's eyes flashed with a glint. I remember that he secretly learned the family clan's forbidden techniques, and one of it among them was a technique that allows him to resurrect his soul through dying corpses. It can be employed when people are just about to die but still on their last breaths, where he can then devour that person's spirit to gain new life. As devouring a live person's spirit soul was just too insidious, when the previous clan head was in power, he set a rule that if it was discovered that anyone secretly learned such forbidden techniques, they would be punished by having their spirits severely wounded and their cultivation completely dispersed. But Qing Tianlin had been very smart. Even though he had been practicing them for many years, he was already able to conceal his forbidden technique's aura. Qing Yili's turned dark when he heard that. You mean that he could still be alive? And could possibly have come to this other world like us? I will not deny that possibility, Qing Yu said. Then aren't you in even greater danger? Qing Yili's face creased up in worry. You need to go back with me to the water edge. In that way, I can at least protect you. Aren't you thinking of me as being too weak? Qing Yu shook her head in helplessness. In the previous life, I had had no other choice as I was unable to bring myself to strike Qing Tianlin, even though in the end he had. But he had once treated me with a sincere heart in the past after all. It was always so cold and unfeeling in large family clans. Qing Yu's parents had both died when she was very young, and she had been brought up by her grandfather. Qing Tianlin was the only kin that made her feel the warmth of kinship, and that was why at the very end, she would rather choose her own death in order to grant him his maniacal ambitions and tyranny. Qing Yu's gaze turned to look gently outside. The handsome-looking youth was sitting quietly outside. He was clearly still reading his book intently, but his gaze would occasionally drift over her way, seemingly curious about what the people inside were discussing about, but still remained seated steadfastly outside, looking like he was just keeping watch for them out there. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qing Yili saw that the aura around her had turned to become highly gentle, and he then noticed the direction of her gaze. That child is... That's my younger brother, Qing Bei. Qing Yu's lips curled up slightly in a smile. I cannot go with you to the water edge, but at least we have met, and it's good enough that you know that I am here. You do not have to worry about me, as people who have died once treasure their lives very much more, and if anyone intends to bring me harm... The corners of the young lady's smile then deepened, her beautiful facial features becoming absolutely dazzling and gorgeous. I will have their lives first. Chapter 67. 1. Return Journey. Bright Moon Divine Temple. A graceful and elegant woman in a cloud-colored dress was seated quietly in the darkness in a room filled with twinkling specks of blue lights. Surrounded by those blue light specks were numerous square-shaped jade tokens, every one of those tokens flashing intermittently, looking like countless eyes suspended up in the air. Suddenly, a rattling sound reached the ears. It was a jade token on the extreme left that was suddenly shaking, before it quickly fell down to smash into pieces, to turn into a fine powder. The woman's exquisite brows and eyes were then tinged into a slight smile, and right after that, a pleasing voice then rang out softly. Enchi's soul tablet has crumbled. She died so pitifully. The 10,000 jade tokens in here all represented the fate of a person. The intensity of its glow showed a person's life force, and if its light was extinguished, it would mean that the person has died. And the extent of the damage on the soul tablet indicated the kind of pain the person had suffered before his death. If that person had died peacefully, the soul tablet would just lose its light. Breaking into half would mean that person had died unnaturally, and when it broke and crumbled, it would mean that they had been tormented to death. The crumbled dust that Enchi's soul tablet had turned into meant that her spirit soul had completely dispersed, and not a single bit of her presence existed anymore. Temple Lord, I fear that someone else's hand has a part in this. It has been quite a while since Enchi died, but it is only now that her spirit has been destroyed. It seems to me that the other party is intentionally doing this to throw us off. A white-robed man was standing just behind the woman, and he now came forward to say respectfully, "Haha." The woman laughed softly, seemingly in delight. Has the Dark Lord left from the dark regions recently? The white-robed man was taken aback a moment, looking like he had been surprised by the question. He has. The Dark Lord left about 7 days ago. It would seem like this person that Inchi was seeking vengeance upon, in rather intricately linked to the Dark Lord. To think that he would personally go forth, it looks like he must be rather concerned. Temple Lord, would you need me to go look into it? This person must not be underestimated, and if he comes to Cloud Heaven in future, it might be disadvantageous to us. The white-robed man asked, testing the waters. Hearing that, the woman narrowed her eyes ever so slightly and glanced at him. Don't stick your nose into it. Is a person that the Dark Lord seeks to protect someone you dare to antagonize? But Inchi is after all a member of our Bright Moon Temple. Even as a traitor, she should be punished by us. The other party is just someone from those low-level lands, and what they are doing is a direct challenge to the authority and might of our divine temple. The white-robed man said indignantly. Fool! The woman flicked one of her sleeve, which sent the man's entire body flying a far way out, the powerful and oppressive force causing the man so much agony he vomited out a mouthful of blood. The emotion-devouring curse that Inchi planted on the man has been broken, and with the kind of intelligence he possesses, how could he possibly not be able to guess who was culpable? We've as good as lost the battle, and now almost the war. Here you are still thinking to antagonize him further? Although my Bright Moon Temple holds control over the fate of the lives of the countless people under the heavens, and even when the dark regions today is not like what they were in the past, as long as the one man, Luo Junyao, is present, they will never be shaken off from their position. Do you understand? The white-robed man's face was white as a sheet, his body sprawled on the ground. Enduring the pain in his chest, he said, Your subordinate has been foolish, and I ask for the Temple Lord's punishment. Forget it. You're dismissed. The woman said in a cold voice, before turning around with a flick of her sleeves, no longer giving the man a single glance. The slender body stood straight-backed in that spot for a long while before she then slowly lifted her head up. Under the twinkling blue glow of the countless soul tablets, there was a faint red light mixed up among them, standing out from all the others. The corners of the woman's lips lifted up, and an indiscernible smile broke on her face. Chapter 67. 2. Return journey. In the end, Qing Yili was still not able to persuade Qing Yu to go with him. He could disregard anyone else's opinion and insist on having his way, but he could not possibly not care about what Qing Yu thought. Even though Qing Yu did not agree to leave with him, Qing Yili had not remained in the Green Wave Kingdom much longer. After they asked for leave from the Green Wave Emperor, they had then embarked on their journey back to their own kingdom. The day the Water Edge Kingdom were leaving, it was as grand as when they had come, with everyone coming out to watch. The Crown Prince Xin Yuanche represented the Green Wave Emperor to see them off, and many of the citizens lined the streets to watch, like they were glad to see this god of slaughter finally go. The large convoy trundled along on their way, and then suddenly stopped abruptly when a soldier shouted out loudly, Who are you? The chief of guards seated upon his horse recognized the person, and he was taken aback a moment. He then turned himself around and said in a soft voice towards the person inside the horse carriage, Your Highness, it's Miss Qing. A hand suddenly lifted the curtain in the carriage, and the eyes under the mask were dazzling bright as he looked at the white-clothed figure in front, a young lady with exquisite-looking features. Her hair was lifted up behind her by the wind, and when she turned her head sideways to look his way, strands on her hair then gently caressed her cheek, a highly alluring and seductive sight. The several soldiers at the lead of the column were caught off guard as they stood there bedazzled. Out here in the wilderness, and such a peerless beauty had suddenly appeared before them. Could it be a demoness who had sucked out the life essence of humans? Qing Yili came walking down and looked straight at her. Have you changed your mind? You're willing to leave together with me? Qing Yu winked and then playfully lifted her hands up in a shrug. I have clearly not. The bright sparkling eyes then suddenly dimmed. From what she saw, that expression was just like a little wolfhound who had just spotted a juicy bone and then saw the bone suddenly disappear right before its eyes. Qing Yu then laughed rather helplessly and then walked in closer right under the stunned gazes of the soldiers, coming to stand right before Qing Yili. I came to see you off, and also to give this to you. Upon saying that, a porcelain white hand turned to show her palm, where 2 bottles suddenly appeared, one green and one white. Qing Yili took them. What are these? Didn't you tell me that the Water Edge Emperor is frail and weak? His body ill of health? I think his sickly body is mostly due to illness inherited right from the time he was still in his mother's womb. In the green bottle are blood-nourishing elixirs that I cultivated. Use the mind-gathering fluid in the white bottle with his bath by just dripping 2 drops into the water. Remember to not put in more than that, or his frail body might not be able to withstand it. Qingyu relayed her instructions carefully. Qing Yili clutched the 2 tiny little bottles tightly in his hand, and the look in his eyes changed, seeming like he wanted to say something, but he did not say anything in the end. This will help nurse his body's basic constitution first, and if I happen to come to the Water Edge Kingdom in future, I can help purge out the poison for him to make a complete recovery, as repayment for having saved you back then. Qingyu raised her eyes up to look at him, her words sounding one after another. I do not wish for you to be tied down in any way, as you should be free. Qing Yili in the past knew nothing of even the most basic things about human interaction. Now that he had become the Duke of a kingdom, controlling the entire Water Edge Kingdom's army, it was not known how much he had had to give within all that. That part of him was very similar to herself, never wanting to owe anyone any favors, always seeking to repay the other party hundreds or even thousands of folds. Hearing everything that Qingyu had said, Qing Yili's body stiffened, and then his slightly cold voice that was tinged with a sliver of yearning then said, "If I can, I only want everything to be just like before, to always be by your side. Even if I am just one among several hundred hidden guards around you, just to be able to always see you will make it the thing that I will want to do most." Chapter 67. 3. Return journey. At the last moment of parting, the tall man with his towering frame then slowly lowered himself to gently lean against the young lady's thin shoulder, and his habitually cold voice was tinged with an almost imperceptible gentleness. I had always felt that we will never part, and that is why I have never asked before. But now, at the moment that we finally managed to meet after overcoming countless obstacles, I want to tell you, little you, when there are only the 2 of us left here in this alien world, to me, the world that Qing Yili lives in needs you to exist, and only just you. You've said that you will never abandon, so you will have to take full responsibility for your words. It was not known from when that the man who was never good with words was capable of such warm and gentle words, with such thick endearment and love, just like that jade-eyed void-traversing beast, who was only able to show such trust and sentimentality to its companions. Qingyu sighed as if she had not heard him, her fair, slender fingers lifting up to rest on the back of the man's head lightly to pat him reassuringly. The entire convoy from the Water Edge Kingdom stared utterly flabbergasted at the scene before their eyes. To think that their duke, who was always cold as ice and a man who never liked anyone to come close to him, would have such a side to him. To be so reliant on a young lady like this, his body seemingly at such complete ease like they have never seen before, the icy aura fully absent. To witness the scene of that tall and towering man leaning on the young lady, not only did they not feel any discomfort, it was in fact highly harmonious and soothing. The tall and burly chief of guards then slipped over to come beside Ajin, and then asked slyly, "Who in the world is that young lady? That the Duke is being so intimate with her?" Ajin rolled his eyes at the man. "Can't you tell when it's all so obvious? Are you a retard?" Of course Ajin had not spoken that out loud, as all men were proud and loved to saving face. No matter how reluctant he was, Qing Yili needed to go already. With the Water Edge Emperor in such poor health, he could not possibly wait too long. The Water Edge Kingdom's convoy then slowly moved far into the distance. Qingyu stood in her spot outside the city for quite a while before she turned around to leave. But right after she left, a person came walking out from within the shadows. In a flowing fairy-like light green dress, her countenance peerlessly exquisite, cold as frosty snow, with a light pink flower on her forehead, which lent another tinge of glamour to that reserved and disciplined countenance. This person was Yin Luo. She had seen the entire scenario that occurred earlier with her own eyes. She had not forgotten Qing Yili's eyes that had been gentle as gentle waters. She would never have imagined that Qing Yili could ever turn to become someone so gentle and so approachable. And all of this had been because of one girl, Yin Qingyu. Huh, they are really going to force her hand? A sinister glint then tainted those clear, bright eyes, and those beautifully manicured nails then scratched out 5-finger marks upon the tree bark beside her. On her way back to the Eternal Peace Duke Manor, Qingyu could not avoid having to pass the strategically located gathered cloud loft. And it was coincidentally at the very moment she was walking past the place that a mirthful male voice sounded out behind her. Oh, what a coincidence. Rather than a proper invitation, isn't a chance encounter so much better? Qingyu's steps halted, and she came to a stop. In front of her was a man dressed in highly flamboyant red. The ends of his lips lifted in an enchanting smile. His narrow peach blossom eyes widened. Young Master Qing, I haven't seen you for a long time. Has this demon been waiting here specially just to snub her? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yu Qingyu was in no hurry to get away, but just crossed her arms up. You need something? Can't we just have a casual chat? Aren't we already friends? Bai Jiyin said disarmingly. Without knowing why, seeing this fella always made her unconsciously think of this saying. Unsolicited, ingratiating flattery can only come from the wicked and thieves. Chapter 68. 1. Watching the spectacle. If there's nothing, then I'll be going, Qingyu said with an indifferent glance at him, and was going to move around him to continue on her way. Bai Jiyin then said with a teasing laugh from the other side. You've just come back from seeing your little lover off? You followed me? Qingyu's eyes narrowed dangerously. Will I need to tell you to know that? The area around the gathered cloud loft has my eyes everywhere, and it shouldn't surprising that you have been spotted passing through here. Bai Jiyin was not showing the slightest guilt at having been caught, but was smiling broadly at her. Since you're already here, why not come in for a cup of tea? Qingyu knitted up her brows, not knowing why this fellow was insisting on standing in her way and not letting her pass. She was just about to say something in response when out of the corner of her eye she saw a person slowly walking over. Qingyu was taken aback, and in the very next moment, she quickly grabbed Bai Jiyin by his clothes and pulled him to go around a corner. Only after she saw that the person has walked a far way off past the front did she then walk out, her gaze looking rather complicated. Yinning Luo? Where had she just come back from? Bai Jiyin saw that she was looking rather distracted, and he turned to look at the figure that had just gone a distance past while he said, You know that person? When you passed the gathered cloud loft earlier, she appeared about a cup of tea's time behind you and was following you. She followed me. Qingyu raised her eyes up to look at him. And I did not notice anything? That joke was not believable in the slightest. You don't believe me? Bai Jiyin was immediately felt his anger rise when he saw that contemptuous gaze. What good will it do me to lie to you? Although these low-level lands cannot be compared to Cloud Heaven, but all those sects and clans here hold quite a number of treasures with strange powers, so there are no lack of artifacts that can hide one's presence. Unless they meet with an absolute and peerless expert, most people will not be able to sense them. Hearing that, Qingyu lowered her eyes and was thoughtful. Yinning Luo was an inner disciple of the Faint Mist sect, and it was highly possible for the sect leader to give his favored disciple a few of those artifacts. So, this shows that she was clearly still not powerful enough. But thinking back on it, as the crown prince had been the one who saw Qingyi off to the city gates, Yinning Luo, who had just called off the marriage engagement, would inadvertently be in an awkward position to show herself. So she had merely intended to just see Qingyi off in secret, but had coincidentally encountered Qingyu and witnessed everything. It seemed that Qingyi really held a rather special position in Yinning Luo's heart, and Qingyu just could not help but have the feeling that calling off the marriage engagement was something that Yinning Luo had been planning to do for a very long time, just so that she could stand beside Qingyi openly. Looking at the situation, it was feared that Yinning Luo was seeing her as an imaginary enemy. Seeing Qingyu deep in thought, Bai Jiyin did not disturb her. But that peace only lasted for a short instant when a loud smashing crash startled the two of people. Qingyu was merely a little bewildered and did not give too much of a reaction, but the enchanting-looking red-robed man who had been sporting a brilliant smile on his face immediately reacted instinctively like he had been conditioned into it, to dash right into the gathered cloud loft. Immediately after that, His exasperated and infuriated voice rang out loudly in a shout. Lu, June, Yao, your father, I have just gotten people to repair the railing 2 days ago. Have you become addicted to breaking railings already? Qingyu was speechless. He sounded like he was really furious, to even use the word your father. Although Bai Jiyin looked to be every inch the complete opposite of conformity, an absolute wastrel and a good-for-nothing, but he was after all still a young lord born from a noble family, so needless to say, his manners and demeanor had always been impeccable. For a man who was long used to be able to not reveal his emotions, such emotional outbursts of pure, unbridled rage was really rare to see. But, having dealt with that man Lu Junyao before and knowing him to be someone who was capable of restraint and suppressing his emotions, why had he flown into such a rage all of a sudden? Chapter 68. 2. Watching the spectacle, Qingyu was merely feeling curious as she took a few steps closer towards the door. With that one look, she actually came to see a man that could be considered to be slightly familiar looking. In a full white robe, the exceptionally handsome-looking man with a beautiful pair of eyes, more devilishly seductive than a woman's, was at that moment rather wretched-looking, with a chunk of hair on one side of his temples seemingly broken off. It was actually Bellied Jiran who was always seen hanging around Qingyu. At that same moment, up on the second floor was a man in a lavish purple robe with his back leaning languidly against the wall. A handsome countenance seemingly favorably blessed and crafted by the hand of God himself that looked so mysterious with his pair of heart-stirring violet eyes lazily narrowed, his light-colored lips curved in an imperceptible smiling arc. The aura surrounding his body was clearly so lazy and indifferent, but it was so oppressive that made one unable to catch his breath. Bai Jiyin was stunned for a moment when he felt the strange, oppressive air after he came in. Upon seeing Bellied Jiran at the side, he then seemed to understand and his face twisted up in displeasure as he said, "You still dare to come here?" Bellied Jiran's face was one of bitter laughter, but before he could say anything, Bai Jiyin was already saying sinisterly, "Isn't this kid here courting your own death here? I really do not have any ill intentions. I am just purely thanking the dark." "Shut up," Bai Jiyin interrupted him viciously. "Haven't I already said that it was just purely by accident? And here you are still aggressively coming here. If not for the fact that that group of people were too blind to see, coming to antagonize someone they shouldn't have, do you think you will still be alive now? I don't think just because there was a chance encounter between us, and you think we have a relationship between us now. That is entirely not possible at all. I really am not. Someone as weak as you are isn't even qualified to be my subordinate. Just hear me out. If you dare go out there and blab your mouth, be careful that I'll come destroy you." It was probably because he was too exhausted from being covered in bruises and injuries that Bellied Jiran just gave up trying to explain himself, where he just remained there like a wilted little grass to suffer the other party's insults and ridicule. After Bai Jiyin said a whole bunch, he then looked up at the man upstairs and said, "I'll say, you can get as displeased as you want with him, but do you have to vent your frustration out at the expense of my money?" If not for the fact that the gathered cloud loft he had opened for the past few years was also being run as a brothel underneath its facade, where he had been getting a constant source of money providing information to the rich fragrance loft, which was an assassin's guild, his little bit of savings would already have been depleted because of that fella up there. "Can you tell me why you have chosen to come down to this lower realm lands to suffer for? There are clearly so many things still waiting for you to go deal with, but here you are acting like an idler with absolutely nothing to do. Seeing us all running our legs ragged, and you do not feel the slightest bit of shame and remorse?" Bai Jiyin said with his head lowered and looking highly pained as he pointed a finger at the man, his face like he had expected so much more of that man. The man upstairs finally moved his body, and his beautiful violet eyes flashed with a glint, his expression seemingly bewildered. "Isn't that what you were supposed to do in the first place? Why should I feel any guilt? What does he mean by putting on that face that looked as if it was a matter to be expected and completely right? Just where was he getting that sense of superiority from?" But there was just such a kind of people in the world, where even if they did not do a single thing, they just had that certain charm that subdued the people around them, making them slog like a horse for them willingly and without a single word of complaint. The greatest evidence of that could be seen on Bai Yin himself. Bai Yin then seemed to sigh out in exasperated helplessness before he said, "Just when are we going back? I don't feel like it." The other party casually tossed out those cold words. Why? Is a reason even needed? Bellied was left out there to dry like he was insubstantial as air as the two men conversed without paying him the slightest attention. It was as if they were confident enough that he would not spill the beans, and even if he did, they would be able to silence him before he could do that. But just as he was thinking to leave feeling all gloomy and depressed all by himself, his eyes suddenly lit up. It's you? Chapter 68. 3. Watching the spectacle, is she Qing Yi Li's beloved? Didn't he say that he was bringing her with him? Why is she still here? Qing Yu nodded and then walked inside. Why are you here? It's a long story. Bellied gave a long sigh. I had just merely seen my savior and wanted to thank him but was misunderstood to be harboring bad intentions. Qing Yu looked at his sad and depressed but still alluring pair of eyes before she said in a low mutter, "It's probably because you do not look like a good person." Bellied could not find anything to say. Oh, you know this kid? Bai Yin watched the two people conversing happily, and he asked in surprise, "You guys know each other?" Bellied belatedly realized, suddenly noticing that he had been immediately blasted downstairs the moment he came in, but this young lady who was walking in so calmly was completely safe and unscathed. Qing Yu did not answer, but it was a beaming Bai Yin who opened his mouth instead. Not only do we know each other, our relationship is not any ordinary one as well. Our Lord cares greatly for her. Bellied face twisted up in utter shock. You actually? How could you possibly come to be acquainted with them? And that man Qing Yi Li? That look of shock and incredulity on his face looked as if he had just seen her commit an absolutely deplorable and heinous crime. Qing Yu was speechless. What did she even do? Have you, in the dark? No. I mean, how could you have come to be tangled up with them? Aren't you Qing Yi Li's beloved one? He said he was going to bring you with him, but you have now appeared here. Did you stay behind because of this man? You've betrayed Qing Yi Li. It must be said that Bellied imagination was really just too rich to be able to imagine the scenario into one of being heartlessly abandoned by one's beloved, a moving and tragic scene where one carries his torn and bleeding heart back to his kingdom, and Bellied was immediately indignant with rage for Qing Yi Li. Qing Yu remained silent. How is it that she was not aware of all these things he was claiming? Betraying little Yi and leaping into the arms of another. Is he misunderstanding something here? Bai Yin and Lu Junyao were both stunned for a moment by those words they had just heard. Those two men had indeed built up a great rapport over many years, as they remembered nothing else of all those words, but just the ones that said, "Stay behind because of this man." Because of who? Is it Lu Junyao? From the moment the man with the lazy expression had seen the young lady appear at the door, his gloomy and depressed mood had instantly improved by quite a bit. It was not known why, but it was really just that amazing. Even when he had seen her dressed up as a young youth who had been treating his condition with a serious expression on her face, he had felt a strange sense of comforting ease. His depression and rage that had started when the young lady had said they were even from then on evaporated in that instant when he saw her, no longer feeling angry about anything. And that statement from Bellied that said, "Stay behind because of this man," had caused a certain place in his heart to jump in excitement out of the blue, although he himself was not aware what had caused it, but just knew that he was feeling happy. This must be what being happy feels like. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU on the other side, Qing Yu was massaging her brow. You must be misunderstanding something here. The relationship I have with little Yi is not what you are thinking. So betrayal does not come into the picture at all. Then why didn't you leave with him? Why do I have to leave with him? This is where my home and family is. But those words came to mean a different thing in Bellied ears. To him, when she said her home and family, it included Lu Junyao as well. Chapter 69. 1. I'm great when I'm in a good mood. Bellied ran peeked a glance out of the corner of his eyes upstairs before he suppressed his voice to say very softly, "Let me tell you, this man is very dangerous. You'd better not have anything to do with him, or you might very well come to invite disaster upon yourself. That is all I can say." Upon saying that, he then pulled away, putting some distance between them before he clasped his hand over his fist and said, "I hope that if fate decrees it, you two gentlemen will come to pay the Bailey family a visit as our guests, and my humble self here will definitely extend our greatest hospitality to you." Thereafter, he did not wait for them to reply before he turned around and left. "What a strange fellow," Bai Jiyan shook his head and said, but was then all smiles once again when he turned around and saw Qingyu. "Come on in and have a cup of tea. I just happened to have received superior batch of tea leaves, and you'll definitely love it. We can forget about the tea. Why had you stopped me out there earlier? I do not think that you just want to have tea with me and talk about old times, do you?" Qingyu said indifferently, the last statement said while looking at Lu Junyao. Bai Jiyan would naturally not come out to look for her on his own initiative. He must have done that under the instigation of this man. "The other day, why didn't you come?" Lu Junyao asked as he descended the stairs slowly, and then looked at her quietly. Qingyu raised an eyebrow. "You wanted me to come merely because you wanted to warn me that Qing Li might wish to harm me, and you wanted me to be wary of him, right?" "That's right. Then there is no need for you to worry at all. He will never harm me." Qingyu slowly replied and paused a moment before she raised her eyes up to look at Lu Junyao. "With your powers, you guys would probably have realized that I am not from this lands." Although they already had their own guesses and suspicions, but hearing her say it herself, it was still rather shocking. But what really made Lu Junyao really start to become suspicious was when she was unconscious for 5 whole days after she was brought back from the barricaded spirit tower, where her body was cold and she was not breathing during that period. It was only when he extended his consciousness to probe that he discovered that there was no soul in her body, but just an empty shell. A person alive would not exhibit a phenomenon like having their soul leave their bodies, unless the bodies were forced to be abandoned and was to be reborn, and while the body's consciousness was unclear and its 5 senses lost, the soul would then roam and wander around. Then, could that mean that the young lady was an highly skilled expert who came down from cloud heaven? When that thought came into his mind, the young lady curled her lips up and said with a smile, "But I have absolutely nothing to do with whatever that cloud heaven of yours is. Qing Li and I were from the same world, and we have known each other for a long time." "You mean to say that both of you are from another world?" Lu Junyao's eyes flashed, seeming to not have expected that. Some adjoining thoughts were actually coming to mind, but his train of thought was interrupted by her words, especially about the time when he had gone to the Divine Healers sect, and the things that Bai Chio had told him about. Maybe something had gone wrong somewhere? That's right. About this, not many people know about this. Besides Little Bay, most probably only these 2 people know about it. She had initially not intended to say anything, but since they already had their own suspicions, she might as well come clean with them. As she was just an insignificant figure anyway, she did not expect that they would be so free as to bother exposing her identity to anyone. Lu Junyao was silent a moment before he said, "Maybe when you go to Cloud Heaven someday, some secrets would then rise to the surface." That profound statement from him was not understood even by Bai Jiyan, who had always been able to read his mind the best. What kind of a charade was he playing at? Qingyu was taken aback a moment, not knowing what he meant exactly by that. But a stabbing pain suddenly struck within her head, and myriad bright red colors flashed in passing highly fleetingly, so fast that she was not able to capture what it was. Chapter 69. 2. I'm great when I'm in a good mood. Those alluring phoenix-like eyes then widened slightly as she stared. What was that just now? Oh, right. Bai Jiyan suddenly seemed to remember something, and his smile became highly earnest as he said, "Miss Qing, do you still have any of those antidote pills? The ones you gave us before had been used up, and I had forgotten to keep one for research to see if I might be able to cultivate one as well." That box of antidote pills had not contained that many, but only about 10 pills, or so, as one usually would not need to use them often. She had not thought that they would need so many, but thinking back about it, it was little wonder. The high-level lands had no lack of highly skilled experts, and their elixir cultivators would also be of a high grade. Their witch doctors were well-versed in using poisons and antidote pills, must be very important to them. But Qingyu did not hesitate to speak the hurtful truth. I still have more, but even if I were to give you the entire pill formula, you will still not be able to attain the same effects. Different elixir cultivators employs different methods, and this calls very highly precise and intricate control of fire in its cultivation. The slightest misstep would make all the effort be for naught. Bai Jiyin was unable to rebuke her in any way. So that means no matter how hard he researched it, it will be to no avail. The world always had people born to make others feel utterly useless. Ever since I came to know a maniac like you, I cannot help but feel that all those years I spent on studying medicine and healing had been in vain, Bai Jiyan said in a despairing tone, and then immediately turned his words around. Why not you come to Cloud Heaven to become our elixir cultivator? You will definitely be treated very well. Qingyu looked at him out of the corner of her eyes, and she said in a highly arrogant tone, You cannot afford to employ me? It was not known just what kind of a land that must be blessed with such good feng shui to be able to produce such an interesting soul. Even when spouting such audacious words in such an arrogant manner, it still made people unable to become angry with them, like she was born to be elevated above all. I'll have the antidote pills sent here when I have the time. But as we do not have any debt owing between us anymore, I will be charging money for them this time. Qingyu said as she knitted up her brows in thought. These antidote pills of mine are not things you can get with any amount of money, but since we are acquainted, I'll just make it 1,000 gold taels a pill for you. Upon saying that, she then gave Lu Junyao a look, the expression on her face saying, That's a very good deal for you. 1,000 gold taels to Lu Junyao was worth less than a hair on a cow. But of course he had absolutely no sense of money at all because it had always fallen onto Bai Jiyin to handle something so trivial to him. Hence he quickly nodded his head generously and said, 1,000 gold it shall be. Bai Jiyin was just bleeding in his heart. A prodigal wastrel, truly a prodigal wastrel. I'll be making a move then. I will still say the same thing. I do not want to invite trouble, so even if we meet, take it as if you do not see me. Our relationship now is purely one of buyer and seller. Lu Junyao could not help but laugh when he heard that, as he then went on to ask, That how must it be like before we can become friends? Qingyu, who already had one foot outside the door, then paused. You must first be certain that you will not bring me any more trouble and we can talk. I do not want to be persecuted suddenly out of the blue again. That had not felt all that great. Before she becomes strong, she must continue to keep a low profile. This stolen new life had not been easy to come by, and she would have to carefully calculate it before every little step she took. The man with his flawless countenance then seemed to show a rippling gleam in his pair of violet eyes, like light reflecting upon spring water, and his voice then sounded deep and magnetic to say, Such a thing will not ever be repeated a second time. I guarantee it. The young lady did not turn around, walking further and further away. Bai Jiyin furrowed up his brows, suddenly feeling a bad premonition. Don't tell me you intend to stay here permanently? Why not? The man asked, the expression on his face saying that it was a matter only natural and right. Chapter 69. 3. I'm great when I'm in a good mood. We're not going back to the dark regions? Everyone's waiting for you to go back and avenge them, for you to lead them, delivering slaughter and massacre in all directions. Revenge? Lu Junyao's face was one of bewilderment. Revenge against what? Bai Jiyin almost vomited out a mouthful of blood. Forcibly suppressing it down, he took a deep breath and said, Have you forgotten about the bunch of prancing clowns from the Hunters Guild? They have not let up on striking against the dark regions all these years, and the emotion-devouring curse you were afflicted with is definitely the work of someone from the Divine Temple. Are you going to just tolerate all that? Lu Junyao's eyes were calm as he looked at Bai Jiyin a moment, and it was quite a long while before he said, Even you are calling them prancing clowns, so is there a need for me to take action personally? And isn't the person who laid the curse on me already dead? Bai Jiyin's face looked highly suspicious. Since when did you become so generous-hearted? Is that so? Lu Junyao curled up the corners of his lips. I'm great when I'm in a good mood. My heavens! Please have that normal Lu Junyao come out. He's really rather frightening when he's in such a good mood. It was only when Qingyu returned to the eternal Peaceduke Manor that she came to discover that Qingbei was not in the tranquil abode. She only knew upon asking the servant maid about it that he had been summoned to the main hall for a meal, and it was Yen Su who had personally sent people to come get him. The servant girl then relayed Qingbei's message asking her to go over as well if Qingyu comes back, as it was said to be a family dinner and everyone would be there. Qingyu sighed helplessly. Why is it so troublesome? Another family dinner? Didn't Imo Han Yin just hold a feast recently? They would surely see her this time at the dinner. But with her dad she got for free there this time, that woman wouldn't dare to act too impudently. In the main hall, the large table was filled with people seated according to hierarchy. In the head seats were Yen Su and Imo Han Yin, while the siblings Yin Luo and Yin Shicheng out on the left and right of them just immediately after. Imo Han Yin then said, her face pained, "Little Ning, why are you suddenly saying that you want to leave out of the blue? You have not come back for so many years, and you've just come home for a while, not even a month." Today's family dinner was actually a farewell dinner specially prepared for Yin Luo. She was one of the faint mist sect's inner disciples, and she had already stayed outside for too long a period, having decided that she would go back tomorrow. Hence, a family dinner was hastily prepared. And once one was admitted into the faint mist sect, they were isolated from the world, unable to send letters or any information. It was located in a mysterious place, a fairy-like realm, where outsiders would not be able to find its entrance at all. The faint mist sect's disciples were not allowed to leak the location of the sect's entrance, or they would be severely punished and would be driven out of the faint mist sect. That's right, little Ning. You had not come back for so long and mother missed you so much, Yin Shicheng said, trying to persuade her to stay, unwilling to see his younger sister leave. Yin Ning Luo shook her head. I had originally asked for a month's leave from master this time, and I have delayed it for quite a period. Moreover, it will be the quarterly trials meet for the sect's inner disciples in another 20 over days. If I fall behind, it will be hard for me to come out again in future. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Hearing that, no matter how hard it was to see her leave, Han Imo Yin had to give up on making Yin Ning Luo stay, as nothing was more important than her daughter's exemplary talents. Yin Su cast his gaze down the table, and he was just about to make an announcement for the feast to start when the soft and gentle voice of a young lady slowly drifted in. I am late. The slender and tall young lady stepped into everyone's sight, that beautiful and exquisite face revealing a highly appropriate smile. After causing everyone to fall into a momentary daze, they saw that she had come in closer in a blink, before moving to an empty seat right at the end. Two other people were in slightly special circumstances. The fifth young Miss Yin Jiying was frail and sickly, and hence she seldom moved herself about. There was another young girl who was still too young to attend such a grand affair, and that was why there were still a few other empty seats. Chapter 71. Why not go to the faint mist sect? The eyes of the royal concubines and ladies present all looked rather surprised. This young lady seemed to be a little different from the last time they saw her just some time ago. It was clearly still the same countenance, but the air and demeanor around her suddenly felt different. Yen Su's attitude towards Qingyu had turned to become very good these days, and it could be said that with the exception of Yin Ning Luo, he doted in Qingyu the most. Hence, he did not say anything much, but just asked in concern. I heard little Bei tell me that you went out to deal with some business? Qingyu arched up an eyebrow and looked at the youth seated opposite her, to see him blinking his eyes at her like he was trying to hint something. Understanding what he meant, where the kid must have come up with an excuse for her, she laughed lightly. That's right. I had to deal with some business and also saw a friend off going on a long journey. Yin Ning Luo had probably seen everything, and there was probably nothing that Qingyu could hide, but seeing her being so honest about the whole thing, it caused Yin Ning Luo to lift her eyes up to look. Yin Su nodded when he heard that. Your big sister Ning Luo is going back to the faint mist sect tomorrow, and the whole family has gathered here today to hold a simple farewell dinner, as we don't know how many years it will be before she will come back again. Although the stalwart and iron-blooded man did not show any emotion on the surface, his words were filled with reluctance for her to leave. Yin Ning Luo had gone into the faint mist sect since she was 6 years old, and she was now already 16 and going on to 17. The number of times she came home less than what one could count on one hand. She had stayed for a whole month this time, and it was longer than the few times she had come back before. Yin-Ning Luo looked at her father's rather sad expression, and her heart softened before she said reassuring in a soft voice, "I will come back to see you whenever I have time in future, but as the Faint Mist sect has their rules for its disciples to not remain in the secular world for too long as it will affect one's cultivation, I can only try my best to fight for a chance." Sigh. I really do not know whether it's a good or bad thing for you to join the Faint Mist sect. Yin Su creased up his brows and sighed a long breath. And you do not even have a sibling at your side to look out for you in there, and it must be really very lonely for you in there all by yourself. Yin Shichang had stayed in the Faint Mist sect for 2 years when he was much younger, but he had pulled out after that, suddenly deciding that he wanted to follow his father to tread the battlefields. His ambitions lay in protecting his country and not in the pursuit down the path of cultivation. The other girls in the Eternal Peace Duke Manor all either had weak body constitution or were not gifted enough, unable to even reach the Faint Mist sect's minimum threshold. Otherwise, if they had been able to at least remain in there for a year or so, when they reached marriageable age in future, having once trained in the Faint Mist sect, it would be something that would put them in a much better light. After Yin Su's rather emotional speech, the corners of Yin-Ning Luo's lips lifted slightly, and her gaze glinted with an imperceptible smile as she turned slightly to look down the table before she said in a voice with deep undertones, "If father is afraid that I'll be lonely, that situation can be easily resolved." "Oh." Yin Su turned to look curiously at her, and then asked, "Little Ning has a good idea?" Feeling completely bored without anything else that interested her while seated further down the table, her beautiful eyes were eyeing the delicacies on the table, thinking when it would be time to eat. Upon hearing Yin-Ning Luo's words, Qing Yu's heart dropped with a thud, an ominous feeling quickly rising up inside her. The Faint Mist sect recruits new blood every year, but there is just a limited number of places, accepting only 50 people. One will only need to pass the selection trials for them to be accepted, and they would be given 1 month's probation period. During that period, there would be all kinds of tests and stringent training, but those who are able to persist and endure through it would be officially accepted into the Faint Mist sect as a disciple. When she finished, Yin-Ning Luo then directed her words further down the table. "Shi Ruo and Shi Wu, didn't both of you pass through quite a few rounds during the All Saints' Day competition? Both of you can go try out for it, and you might be lucky enough to make it through. And little sister Qing Yu, although you have not been all that outstanding before, but haven't you gotten yourself a powerful master now? You must surely be rather skilled now, and you even know medicine. I'm certain you will surely be very well liked by all the teachers." Chapter 70. 2. Why not go to the Faint Mist sect? The faces of Yin Shiro and Yin Shiwu had already changed. What kind of a wicked scheme was this woman planning this time? Asking them to take part in the Faint Mist sect's trials? Who didn't know what the Faint Mist sect lacked the least were highly skilled experts. Any door guard in there would be more than he seems. With all of them possessing such mediocre talent, were they really expected to go there to disgrace themselves? Wouldn't they just end up disgracing the face of the Eternal Peace Duke Manor's face by going there? Qing Yu, who had shown a lackadaisical demeanor all this, while then narrowed her eyes. Yin-Ning Luo wants her to go join the Faint Mist sect. For what? Is she planning to have her killed in there? Or was she going to torment her with all kinds of humiliation throughout the 1 month's probation period, where she would then feel so humiliated from shame that she would then kill herself? She's got it all planned out. Upon hearing those words, it must be said that Yin Su highly approved of it. Besides allowing the few girls to go out and see a bit more of the world, they would also undergo some hardening from it while providing little Ning with a companion within the sect. Wouldn't that be just perfect? It was clear that he had not ever thought that the sisters might not be getting along at all. With that thought in mind, Yin Su then raised his eyes and looked at his daughters to open his mouth to ask, "What do the few of you think?" "Father, we'll definitely not be able to pass the trials. The Faint Mist sect's conditions is just too harsh, and they have so many rules and regulations. We'll surely be driven to madness in there." Yin Shiro lamented in aggrievement. "Your daughter would very much prefer to accompany father and mother by your sides, and allow us to exercise our filial piety." It was not known who had burst out, unable to suppress their laughter, and they then saw the royal consort Imo Han Yin, who had remained quiet all this time, start to say with her enchanting eyes filled with ridicule, "You two are just as old as Little Ning, younger only by several months, and Little Ning is now already ranked among the faint mist sect's inner disciples, the Green Wave Kingdom's most talented female. But here you are both not seeking to improve yourselves at all, but just want to enjoy a leisurely life in comfort, seeking only pleasure. I fear that in time to come, even your husband-to-be's family will look down on such a useless and incompetent daughter-in-law." Yin Shiro and Yin Shiwu were birthed from two royal concubines, and when Imo Han Yan's words sounded, the faces of the two women reddened in shame, immediately lowering their heads down and did not dare to say anything. At most other times when Imo Han Yin intentionally tried to make things difficult for them, they were still about to rebut a few words at least. But the words she said today were highly reasonable, and knowing that their daughters were indeed so pampered till they had accomplished nothing, and the disparity between them was almost like heaven and earth compared with Imo Han Yin and Yin Ning Luo. So no matter how indignant they felt in their hearts, they could do nothing but to silently endure it. On this rare occasion that Imo Han Yin had said those words in such an upright manner for once, even Yin Ning Luo looked at her in slight surprise. She was after all a refined lady born from a noble family, and her grace and demeanor would not be the same as most others. Without mentioning anything else, Imo Han Yin, with her position as the mother of the family, would already be deterrent enough. The Duchess is right. The two of you have indeed been lacking in ambition all these years, and some putting you through the mill would not do you any harm, Yin Su said in a slightly deepened voice as he looked at the obediently silent girls before he showed a satisfied smile. Staring at the ashen-faced Yin Shiro, he then said, "Look at your younger sister Qingyu. Has she said a single word in refusal? And to think that you are 2 years older than her. Such a complete lack of the eternal peace Duke manners, fine manners, and bearing its people have to always show." Yin Shiro was berated suddenly out of the blue, and her heart was feeling highly aggrieved, where she then immediately cast a reproaching look towards Qingyu. Qingyu was speechless. Here she was silent without even having said even a word, and the whole thing has suddenly been turned onto her. "All right, that's decided then. Today we'll have a good meal with Little Ning. Let everyone pick up your chopsticks." Chapter 73. Why not go to the faint mist sect? What they called a family feast was just the whole big family sitting together to have a meal, to munch on home-cooked dishes. Yin Ning Luo and her parents chatted merrily together with her brother on their end of the table, like they were one family by themselves. As for the remaining royal concubines, those who had daughters would chat with their daughters, those without daughters would then just form pairs together, painstakingly discussing topics of inconsequential value, like, "This hairpin of yours really complements your complexion. Where did you buy it?" Or, "We should go to the Thousand Silk Pavilion to go have a look at their latest products next time," or something like that. And on this side, Qing Bei just picked distractedly at the vegetables in his bowl, and then said in a low voice, "Sis, are you really going to the faint mist sect?" Qingyu had not really thought about it, but was just focused on eating. Hearing him say that, she then raised her eyes and asked, I heard that once one went into the faint mist sect, one would not be able to come out as and when they liked unless they were driven or thrown out. Otherwise it would be at least 2 years before they would be able to come out," Qing Bei said in a rather depressed voice. Seeing that the youth was looking rather depressed, Qingyu curled up her lips and laughed. "Why are you afraid that you'll not see me for that long a period?" "It's not that." Qing Bei shook his head, his eyes looking slightly conflicted as he said, "I am just worried. That woman Yin Ning Luo is thinking up all kinds of ways to get you into the faint mist sect. Is she thinking up some nefarious scheme wanting to harm you? After all, her mother is such a sly and venomous woman. He would never be able to forget in this life how he had both his legs crippled when he was at an age most appropriate for him to cultivate and his body poisoned to the point of almost collapsing." The hands of the youth placed upon the table were tightly clasped together, where he then trembled slightly involuntarily. A slender and fair hand suddenly reached over and held him. Raising his eyes, he saw the young lady's face filled with a gentle smile as she said softly, "Don't worry. If she wants to pit herself against me, she's still many years too early." I'm not some soft and squishy persimmon that would allow myself to be kneaded and shaped as others wish after all. Inversely, she was someone who held grudges and would avenge grievances done onto her. People who took an inch from her would have her taking a yard from them, and if anyone really antagonized her would definitely not want to see her really when she's really furious. Qing Bei shook her head. I still can't help feeling worried. Then what do you want to do? Qing Yu arched up an eyebrow to ask. Let me go with you to the faint mist sect. Qing Bei's voice was resolute as he said determinedly. Hearing that, Qing Yu threw a meaningful glance at his legs below the table. Have you forgotten that you are now supposed to be someone with both his legs crippled and unable to walk? Do you intend to bring your wheelchair to go in there with me? Wouldn't that be too attention-grabbing? And the faint mist sect would most probably not accept handicapped people, would they? The youth's lips lifted up faintly at the sides, and the expression on his face was a little sly as he said, Isn't the date to the faint mist sect's recruitment still half a year away? And then? Qing Yu asked with a smile as she waited to hear the other half of what he had to say. A miracle could possibly happen within this half a year's time, and I would be able to stand up again, the youth said with a confident look on his face. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The corners of his lips were tinged with a mysterious and indiscernible smile, and his highly confident expression was exceptionally eye-catching, filled with the kind of youthful exuberance that a boy his age was supposed to possess. It just made one unconsciously want to smile and delight together with him. In the midst of chatting with Yan Ning Luo, Yen Su unintentionally happened to chance upon that scene, and the expression on his face was taken aback for a moment. Those two highly similar-looking faces, so young and beautiful. The ends of his lips formed a faint arc, especially that young lady, who had inherited her mother's alluring and heavenly blessed enchanting eyes that immediately made a part of his heart collapse inwards, to drift back into the far past. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.